Chapter 1814. It's as if the lines of his chakra were clearly drawn out. The rest of his body became transparent. A circle of light flashed around him and covered his entire body in an instant. At the same time, Yonglin's determined attack arrived. The palm strike that contained enough power to shatter the earth struck at Wu Yan's head. Just like that, in the next moment, something that Yonglin didn't expect happened. Whoosh! The violent palm strike landed on Wu Yan's head. However, Yonglin felt as though she had hit air. Her palm passed through Wu Yan's body along with Yonglin's body. She didn't feel like she had hit him at all. All she felt was the whistling sound of the powerful strike in the air. What? Yonglin's pupils shrunk as she passed through Wu Yan and arrived behind Wu Yan. Yonglin could sense that Wu Yan didn't really turn transparent. Instead, it was as though he was in another dimension that was higher than the one she was in. She couldn't touch him as she was in a lower dimension. Why couldn't she touch him even though he wasn't transparent? In fact, this wasn't the first time that Yonglin had seen such a situation. This kind of external interference had no effect at all. It was like an invincible transparent person state. Wasn't this the method used by Bori Shrine's sorceress, Bori Soul Dream, to become the manager of Fantasy Village and the Bori Great Barrier? It was because of this invincible method that Bori's Spirit Dream, who was merely at the peak of rank 8, could stand at the peak in Fantasy Town, where powerful beings were as common as clouds. Could it be that this person had the same method as Bori's Spirit Dream? At this thought, Yonglin's face instantly turned ugly. At this moment, Kagaya of Punglai Mountain let out a cry of surprise, waking Yonglin up from her daze. Princess! Yonglin turned around quickly. She looked in the direction of Kagaya of Punglai Mountain. Then Yonglin saw it. From the heart of Mount Punglai Hui, a ray of light with dazzling brilliance suddenly shot out. With a speed that Yonglin could only feel a blur before her eyes, it suddenly connected to the heart of Wu Yan, who was standing in front of Mount Punglai Hui. Your Highness! Yonglin finally panicked when she saw this. Bai Yonglin couldn't even remember how many years it had been since she was as flustered as she was now. Back then, when Mount Punglai's Hui was executed by Yuedu and exiled to the surface. When he killed all the emissaries from the moon and betrayed the moon. Or was it during the 2 lunar wars when she was scheming against Yakumo Yukari? No, even in the above 3 situations. He had never made Yonglin panic. However, at this very moment, Yonglin of 8 wills was indeed feeling flustered after so many years. Under such circumstances, on the other side, Wu Yan and Mount Punglai's Bright Night had a different feeling from Yonglin. The 2 of them could clearly hear that an outsider couldn't hear. 2 completely different heartbeats were lingering in their ears bit by bit. That was the heartbeat of Wu Yan and Mount Punglai's Bright Night. The 2 different heartbeats seemed to compete with each other, vibrating frequently, and as time passed, the frequency of the vibrations was getting closer and closer, until a certain moment, the frequency of the 2 heartbeats was exactly the same. Only then did the sound suddenly disappear. Then, the light connecting Wu Yan and Mount Punglai's Bright Night's heart was also cut off from the 2 of them. With a slight twist, they gathered together, forming a small light bead the size of a glass bead. With a spin, they shot in the direction of Wu Yan and merged into Wu Yan's body. Feeling a sense of fullness in his body, Wu Yan knew. Mount Punglai's Bright Night. He had already become a summoner who had merged with his life. Mount Punglai's Bright Night suddenly let out a soft groan and covered his head. He looked dizzy. Princess! Yonglin appeared beside Mount Punglai's Bright Night unknowingly and supported him, who seemed to be a little dizzy. A pair of eyes filled with dense, cold, killing, intent stared straight at Wu Yan. The surrounding space constantly trembled, as if she was suppressing the rage and killing intent in her heart. Yonglin's voice that was cold enough to freeze people entered Wu Yan's ears. What'd you do to the princess? Hearing Yonglin's forceful voice that was filled with anger and killing intent, Wu Yan believed that if he didn't give Yonglin a suitable explanation from now on, Yonglin would have an irreconcilable hatred with him. Wu Yan also knew that no matter what explanation he gave, Yonglin wouldn't choose to listen to it. He only looked at Mount Penlai's Bright Knight and said, "Don't worry, Princess Bright Knight is just receiving some memories and knowledge. The system will inject all the memories and knowledge related to the system into the user's summoned character's mind. Therefore, Mount Penlai's Bright Knight should be receiving all the memories and knowledge related to the system. Because he received the memories and knowledge that didn't belong to him, he would feel a little dizzy and would recover quickly. As expected, not long after, Mount Penlai's Bright Knight recovered and no longer covered his head. However, when he looked at Wu Yin, there was a trace of disbelief and shock. "Princess," Yonglin hurriedly asked, "are you all right?" Unfortunately, Mount Penlai's Bright Knight didn't pay any attention to Yonglin. It was as if he didn't dare to believe the memories and knowledge he received. He hesitated for a moment and asked with an uncertain tone, Is this all real? Whether it's real or not, it's hard for me to prove it to you." Wu Yin spread his hands. "However, you should be clearer than anyone about your own situation, right?" Mount Penlai's Bright Knight was also a strong person who was at least level 80. At this level, Mount Penlai's Bright Knight couldn't have not noticed that his life was no longer in his body, but in the body of the man in front of him who he had just met for less than half an hour. His life was fused with the man in front of him, and there was no way to separate them anymore. In other words, Mount Penlai's Bright Knight's life was no longer under her control. Mount Penlai Hui knew that even if someone had the means to kill him, he wouldn't die no matter what. Even if he died, he would be resurrected in another form. However, if the man in front of him died, then even if he was fine, he would die with him. In addition to the memories of the system, summoned character, and the dungeon world, Mount Penlai's Bright Knight fell silent. "Princess," Yonglin called out, but her gaze fell on Wu Yin. She slowly raised her aura. "Yonglin, stop." Before Yonglin could do anything, Mount Penlai's Bright Knight laughed bitterly. "You can't kill him. Otherwise, I won't be able to live either. If we kill him, the princess won't be able to live?" Yonglin's face darkened once more as she understood what was going on. What kind of life-sharing contract was that? "It's not as simple as you think, Yonglin." For a moment, Mount Penlai Hui didn't know how to explain it to Yonglin. He could only sullenly look at Wu Yin. "You really made a fool out of me. I don't want to do that." Wu Yin quickly shook his head. "If it weren't for the fact that you guys are so difficult to deal with, I definitely wouldn't have used such a method." "What do you mean?" Mount Penlai's Hui's expression became displeased. "Are you saying that I'm not qualified to be your summoner?" Wu Yin laughed bitterly. "I didn't say that, summoner." Yonglin frowned deeply. She stared at Wu Yin as if she wanted to see through him. In addition, Mount Penlai's Bright Knight seemed to be unhappy and reproachful. Wu Yin felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. Forget it. After an unknown amount of time, Mount Penlai Hui turned around. "Yonglin, I'm hungry." Yonglin didn't say anything. She just silently led Mount Penlai out of the room. Seeing this, Wu Yin panicked. Just as he was about to say something, a dark red light shot in from outside and imprinted into Wu Yin's eyes. Wu Yin was startled. When he reacted, he immediately reached out and grabbed the dark red light. He looked at his hand and sighed in relief. Looking closely on top of Wu Yin's hand, there was a drop of gem-like blood moving up and down. Chapter 1815. Fantasy Village, Lost Bamboo Forest, Forever Pavilion. Sitting in front of the small wooden table in the center of the Forever Pavilion, Wu Yin supported his face with one hand and rested his elbow on the table. His gaze was fixed in front of him. Opposite him, Kagaya of Penlai Mountain is holding a small bowl filled with white rice. In front of her is a wooden tray with a few small dishes. She is eating the rice in her bowl as she stared at Wu Yin, who is sitting in front of her. She is sizing up Wu Yin, who is sitting in front of her. Not only Mount Penlai, but Yonglin was also sitting beside Wu Yin and Mount Penlai. She was also looking at Wu Yin without saying a word. However, compared to Mount Penlai, Yonglin's gaze was not scrutinizing. Instead, it was cold and hostile. In addition to Mount Penlai and Yonglin, in the corner of the hall, There was also Ling Xian, who was being restrained by the lock of discipline and was enduring the last sin of the 7 deadly sins. She was moaning bitterly as she twisted and struggled. She looked as pitiful as she could be. Under such a strange situation, Wu Yin could only bear the scrutinizing gaze from Mount Penglai, Yonglin's hostile gaze, and Ling Xian's aggressive gaze as he sighed. Who could he blame? Should he blame Mount Penglai and Yonglin? Mount Penglai was just feeling indignant that his life was forcefully taken away and merged with Wu Yin. Yonglin also thought that Wu Yin had done something to Mount Penglai. That was why she was like this, wasn't it? He could only blame Wu Yin for using such a method to provoke the two of them. However, at that time, other than letting Mount Penglai become his summoner, there was no other way. There was no other way to make Mount Penglai and Yonglin believe him and give him a drop of blood. No, it was not that there was no other way. If he thought about it carefully, as long as he could come up with evidence that could convince Mount Penglai Kagaya and Yonglin Yagi, the two of them should not refuse to give him a drop of blood. After all, it was said that there were many evil methods that could use blood as a medium to do something harmful to the owner of the blood. But who was Penglai Mountain's Huey? Who was Yonglin Yomi? Of these two girls, one was the princess of the moon, the other was the head of the moon, and the other was a powerhouse of the 9th step. The other was a demigod powerhouse who had lived for countless years. What kind of evil methods could be used on them without them noticing? Mount Penglai Kagaya herself said that she didn't care as long as Wu Yin could persuade Yonglin Yagi. Yonglin Yagi just wouldn't take Mount Penglai Kagaya's safety as a joke. Yonglin Yagi didn't think that there was any way to hide from her and hurt Mount Penglai Kagaya. If it took some effort, in the end, he would be able to achieve his goal. However, Wu Yin did not want to waste any more time since he had already swallowed the medicine of Yonglin of 8 senses. Hence, he might as well use the most effective method. He would turn Mount Penglai Kagaya into his summoner. Under the situation of life-sharing, Mount Penglai Kagaya had no choice but to believe that Wu Yin wouldn't harm her, although this life-sharing was only one-sided. Originally, Wu Yin wasn't very confident about turning Mount Penglai Kagaya into his summoner. The system had once said that when Wu Yin was in a dungeon world, the characters in that dungeon world couldn't become Wu Yan's summoner, unless the summoner knew about the system before becoming a summoner and voluntarily agreed to become Wu Yan's summoner. Just like in the date battle world, Yijuya, Shixian, Meijio, and Origami had voluntarily become Wu Yan's summoners because they knew about the system from Wu Yan in advance. That was why Wu Yin could make them his summoners in that dungeon world. In this dungeon world, Wu Yin had exploited a loophole to make Mount Penglai Kagaya his summoner. When he was in a dungeon world, he couldn't make the characters in that dungeon world his summoner. Then, if this character also existed in other dungeon worlds, what should he do? Mount Penglai Kagaya was the Mount Penglai Kagaya in the fantasy village, but wasn't she also the Kagaya in Bamboo Tale? On the system summoning list, the introduction of Mount Penglai Kagaya also said that Mount Penglai Kagaya was the eternal pavilion master of the lost bamboo forest in the fantasy village, but was also derived from the Kagaya in Bamboo Tale. Although the Kagaya in the real Bamboo Tale was definitely not the Kagaya of Mount Penglai, in this world, the Kagaya of Mount Penglai was the Kagaya of Bamboo Tale. In this way, when he summoned Mount Penglai Kagaya, it could be said that he was summoning Mount Penglai Kagaya in Bamboo Tale. It couldn't be considered as summoning a character in the current dungeon world, right? Of course, this statement was a little forced, because under this setting, Bamboo Tale could be said to be a story that happened in this dungeon world. The two dungeons were considered one and couldn't be separated. However, Bamboo Tale was indeed a dungeon world, and there was indeed a character called Kagaya. And here, Kagaya was Mount Penglai Kagaya. With the contradiction between the two, it couldn't be better to use the word loophole to describe the situation. It was precisely because there was such a loophole that the system recognized Wu Yan's summoning, allowing Wu Yan to successfully make Mount Penglai Kagaya his summoner in front of her. This was an exception. Unfortunately, in this way, Wu Yan's goal was achieved, but it seemed to have caused a lot of trouble. At least, from the looks of it, Yonglin completely regarded him as an enemy. However, Wu Yin underestimated Yonglin. After a while, Yonglin seemed to have figured out something. Her gaze towards Wu Yin was no longer filled with hostility. Instead, it returned to its previous calmness. I don't know what kind of method you used to forcibly establish a life-sharing contract with the princess, Yonglin suddenly said. But I don't think you can tie the princess to you like this, right? Yonglin's meaning was very simple. She was telling Wu Yin not to think that he could make Mount Penglai Kagaya serve him like a servant just because he shared his life with her. After living for so long, Yonglin of the Eight Wills had seen many methods of life-sharing. In that case, it was not impossible to remove life-sharing. Only Mount Penglai Kagaya knew that no matter how powerful Yonglin was, she was at her wits' end this time. Mount Penglai Kagaya's life had completely merged with Wu Yan's life. There was no distinction between them. It was different from an ordinary life, sharing where the other party would die or share their life force. Otherwise, Yukari wouldn't have felt so helpless when she became Wu Yan's summon. I don't think that I can do whatever I want to Princess Kagaya, just because she is my summon. Wu Yan glanced at Yonglin. Of course, in this situation, you won't believe me no matter what I say, right? Yonglin didn't reply. Instead, she looked at Mount Penglai Kagaya. She wanted him to make the decision himself. Yonglin, you don't have to worry. Mount Penglai Kagaya's expression didn't change as he continued to eat his meal. He was even calmer than Yonglin. Although life-sharing is done, it only means that once he dies, I won't be able to live either. If he doesn't die, I won't be affected even if he is crippled or not. Yonglin smiled when she heard Mount Penglai Kagaya's words. Wu Yin shuddered. What did that mean? As long as she didn't kill Wu Yin, Yonglin could do anything she wanted to Wu Yin. Mount Penglai Kagaya was hinting that if Wu Yin really wanted to use life-sharing to do something to her, then as long as she didn't kill Wu Yin, she wouldn't have to worry about anything else. She was really two-faced. However, I am quite interested in your affairs. Mount Penglai Kagaya smiled when he saw Wu Yin shuddering. After living in the Forever Pavilion for 1,000 years, perhaps it's time to go out for a walk. Mount Penglai Kagaya didn't say anything else after leaving behind those words. Wu Yin and Yonglin fell into deep thought. Silence slowly returned to the scene. Chapter 1816. Fantasy Village, Lost Bamboo Forest. Standing outside the Lost Bamboo Forest, Wu Yin turned his head and looked at the misty green bamboo forest. He sighed faintly. Although he had no choice but to let Mount Penglai become his summoner and obtain a drop of her blood to convince her that he would not harm her, no matter what, Mount Penglai had already become Wu Yan's summoner. As the fusion of life, it could be said that they were inseparable. Wu Yan planned to let Mount Penglai follow him. At least, she would follow him back to the Spalier world after he left the fantasy village. However, when Wu Yin told Mount Penglai his decision, she gave Wu Yin an unfathomable smile and went back to her room without saying a word to continue playing the game. Wu Yin did not understand what Mount Penglai meant. When he was about to chase after her, he was stopped by Yonglin with a cold expression. She ordered him to leave with an unquestionable attitude. Wu Yin was not surprised by Yonglin's attitude. After all, when he asked Mount Penglai to follow him, Wu Yin did not hide it and directly said it in front of Yonglin. With how much Yonglin doted on Mount Penglai, it would be strange if she was nice to Wu Yin. Wu Yin even started suspecting if Yonglin is one of those idiotic moms who would guard against foreign stinky men getting close to her own daughter. No matter what, he did not know how Mount Penglai would develop. He could only take one step at a time. Fortunately, he got the Essence Blood with eternal power. This trip to the Forever Pavilion and 7 days of suffering were not in vain. Next, I still need Essence Blood with Fantasy Power, Essence Blood with Realm Power, and Essence Blood with Nature Power. Which one should I start with? Wu Yin pondered. Essence Blood with Fantasy Power, Essence Blood with Realm Power, and Essence Blood with Nature Power. Wu Yin almost knew who these three kinds of Essence Blood belonged to. So, Wu Yin immediately made a decision. Let's start with the easy ones. Which kind of Essence Blood was the easiest to get? If it was before, it would definitely be Essence Blood with Realm Power. Purple was already Wu Yan's summoner. She was on Wu Yan's side. She would not refuse to give Wu Yin a drop of Essence Blood. Instead, she would be quite happy. However, what gave Wu Yin a headache was that he did not know what Purple was doing. She did not come to him these days. Plus, Wu Yin didn't know where Yakumo's family is, so he didn't bother looking for Yukari. However, Wu Yin did not believe that Purple did not know where he was. With Purple's character, even if she did not come to find him, she must be hiding somewhere. She had been using the gap ability to pay attention to Wu Yan's every move. Otherwise, when he had just arrived at the fantasy village, Lingming's moldy old woman would not have attracted Purple's attack. Since Purple had been paying attention to him, why did she not appear? After pondering for a while, Wu Yin shook his head and gave up thinking. The monster sage Yagi's every move was famous for being unfathomable, because others did not know. What Purple did at a certain moment, was it purely for fun or had a deeper meaning? This time was similar. Purple had not come to find him. Either she did it casually or there was a deeper meaning. No matter which it was, since Purple did not come to find him, then he would not be able to find her unless it was necessary. If it was really necessary, Purple would definitely appear on its own. It was because of this. The blood essence that contained the power of the realm should be the easiest to obtain, but the difficulty of obtaining it became unknown. Then, Wu Yin could only start with the blood essence that contained the power of fantasy, or the blood essence that contained the power of nature. Which of the two was easier to obtain? Wu Yin made his choice in an instant. Before that, let's go there and take a look. Wu Yin smiled helplessly. It's time to go there and take a look. I hope her anger has subsided. After muttering this, traces of magical power surged out from Wu Yan's body, bringing Wu Yin into the void and disappearing on the spot. Fantasy Village, Magic Forest. In the air above a certain corner of the magic forest, a series of ripples suddenly appeared in the space. A figure emerged from within without any warning, hovering in the air above that area. Wu Yin lowered his head and looked down. Immediately, he saw such a scene. In an open space, surrounded by huge trees and filled with miasma, a large manor house stood there for a long time. At the top of the manor house, a girl was standing in a corner with her back facing Wu Yin, who was floating in midair. Threads of magical power extended from her hand and connected them to small, delicate puppets. At this moment, the girl was controlling the puppets and making them hold various tools to repair the hole in the roof that was caused by her not long ago. Today, Alice was wearing a blue dress that looked like a shawl, just like she always did. The dress was blue, the shawl was white, and some scattered ribbons, bows, and other decorations were red. Her skirt reached her ankles, and her soft, golden shoulder-length hair hung down clearly. A red belt was tied around her waist, revealing her slender waist. Her figure was slender, and her beautiful curves were exceptionally eye-catching, making one's mouth dry up involuntarily. Alice seemed to have sensed some kind of change in the space behind her. She paused for a moment, turned around, and raised her head to look at the sky. It was only at this moment that Wu Yin noticed the change in Alice. This was a change that every girl would experience after losing their virginity. After being forcefully taken over by Wu Yin, Alice, who is no longer a pure and innocent girl, now has a hint of flirtatiousness on her delicate face. If you look closely, you can see that Alice's curves have also become more voluptuous. Her every move has a mature and peculiar charm to it. Looking at the current Alice, Wu Yin felt as if his eyes had lit up, and he couldn't help but praise her beauty in his heart. If the previous Alice was very delicate and cute, as delicate as a doll, and as holy as an angel, then the current Alice was truly beautiful. Her temperament was otherworldly, and she was as beautiful as a goddess who had fallen into the mortal world. Her beauty was soul-stirring. On the other side, seeing the man who had forcefully taken her body away, Alice's face was surprisingly calm. She was as calm as still water. On the surface, it looked like this. But whether Alice's heart was as calm as it looked on the surface, that was yet to be determined. Looking at Wu Yin, who was floating in the air, Alice didn't have any intention of saying anything. After a slight glance, she turned around and continued to control the puppet to repair the roof. Wu Yin scratched his cheek, and in a flash, he appeared behind Alice. That After thinking for a moment, Wu Yin tentatively called out, "Alice?" Alice's hands didn't stop moving at all. While controlling the puppet, she continued to do what she was doing, but she didn't seem to have any intention of paying attention to Wu Yin. Seeing this, Wu Yin simply approached. But when Wu Yin approached, Alice spoke. "What's the matter?" Alice's voice was as light and pleasant as always, but there was a trace of coldness that Wu Yin could clearly detect, and a trace of nervousness that Wu Yin couldn't detect. Although he didn't detect the hidden nervousness in Alice's voice, Wu Yin seemed to have made a decision. He walked behind Alice, looked at Alice's pair of slender white arms and snow-white neck exposed outside of the sleeveless dress, and laughed. "Can't I come to see you if there's nothing?" With one sentence, Alice's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Her mind couldn't help but recall the various unsightly scenes from yesterday. Unknowingly, Alice's snow-white cheeks and neck were dyed with a faint layer of pink. She could no longer maintain her cold and calm expression, and it all turned into anger. "If you came here just to take advantage of me verbally, then please leave." After saying that, Alice waved her hand and recalled the puppets that were repairing the roof. The magic thread in her hand was also cut off. She turned around, as if she was going to jump into the hole that was still being repaired and return her home. But in the next second, Wu Yin suddenly reached out and hugged Alice. Chapter 1817. Thump. This was the sound of a huge heartbeat. When Wu Yin reached out and hugged Alice, the heartbeat was so loud that it could be heard from 4 to 5 meters away. Alice's delicate body suddenly stiffened. Originally, Alice's heart wouldn't be in such a mess so easily. But now, Alice was no longer the Alice of the past. Her body already belonged to the man who hugged her from behind. What happened that day was too unbearable for Alice, so she couldn't keep calm in front of Wu Yin. "You? What are you doing?" Alice's voice started to tremble. She started to struggle with all her might. "You? Do you want to die?" "Yes. Do you really want to kill me?" Wu Yin asked back and hugged Alice even more tightly. "If you really think that killing me is the only way to vent your anger, then I don't mind letting you kill me once. Do you think I will show you mercy like yesterday?" Alice was infuriated. She continued to struggle. "If you don't let go, I will really do it. If I really let go, you will run away." "I won't let go," Wu Yin said and stuck to Alice's soft and seductive body. Suddenly, a warm fragrance penetrated Wu Yin's nose. Wu Yin couldn't help but take a deep breath and exhale. And this exhalation, coincidentally, all of them hit Alice's earlobe and snow-white neck, causing the anger on Alice's face to sway. All of it retreated, and her body suddenly became soft. The strength of her struggle weakened a lot. "I came to ask for forgiveness. How can I let you go?" Wu Yin said and lowered his head and kissed Alice's cheek. His hands moved up and stroked Alice's graceful waist. "If you don't forgive me, I will continue to hug you like this. With your charm, I can't guarantee that I won't be able to control myself and enjoy some fun things with you." "Something fun? What is it?" This question didn't need to be asked at all. You. Alice's delicate body trembled, and her voice sounded like she was about to cry. "Didn't you bully me enough yesterday? Are you going to bully me again today?" "I'm not bullying you. I'm just loving you." Wu Yin thickened his skin and hugged Alice's slender waist so that Alice's entire body is stuck in front of him. He held Alice's face in his hands and kissed her on the lips. "I didn't do it on purpose yesterday, but that doesn't mean I don't want to admit it. Alice, my dear wife, please forgive me this time." Caught off guard by Wu Yin's kisses on the lips, Alice panicked and turned her head away. Not sure if it was out of embarrassment or anger, but she started yelling. "Who would beg for forgiveness like you?" Hearing this, Wu Yin didn't show anything on the surface, but he couldn't deny it in his heart. Indeed, this method, it was a bit like he was forcing Alice to submit. It was a bit shameless. But other than this, what else could he do to make Alice forgive Wu Yin? Wu Yin didn't have much interaction with Alice to begin with. Putting aside the matter of him forcefully taking Alice's body, Wu Yin and Alice were not strangers, but they couldn't be considered friends, let alone lovers. In such a situation, With Alice's unrestrained and casual personality, it was very likely that she would treat the matter of her having sex with Wu Yin as an interlude and distance herself from Wu Yin, slowly breaking off their relationship and no longer interacting with each other. Alice was definitely capable of doing such a thing. Therefore, even if it was a bit of a forced abdication or even a bit of a rascal, as the saying goes, only shameless people can get girls. Thinking of this, Wu Yin simply hugged Alice tighter. Without waiting for Alice to struggle, he took Alice's lips in his mouth and gently sucked on them. Oh, no, don't. Under Wu Yan's unusually presumptuous kiss, Alice, who gradually couldn't bear it, could only give up her tough attitude and involuntarily beg for mercy. Of course, such begging would only add to Wu Yan's pleasure and wouldn't have any effect at all. For a moment, on the roof of the manor house, Alice's helpless whimpers gradually echoed and gradually turned into the sound of panting. After an unknown amount of time, when Wu Yin was satisfied and Alice was almost suffocating, Wu Yin let go of Alice's lovely lips. Alice couldn't help but gasp for breath, her cheeks covered with a red color. Forgive me, okay. Wu Yin seemed to be addicted to this way of asking for forgiveness, which could take advantage and gain the upper hand at the same time. He bit Alice's earlobe and whispered softly, "Otherwise, I won't stop, you despicable bastard." Alice lost all her strength as she leaned against Wu Yan's body. She couldn't even struggle. She gasped for air as her body trembled. She used her soft voice to shout at Wu Yan, I will really kill you. I told you I don't mind letting you kill me once. I won't die." Wu Yan let his hand slowly move to Alice's important parts of her body. "If you don't give me an answer, I will do something naughty." Feeling the scorching hot hand slowly moving up and down towards the important parts of her body, Alice's heart was in her throat. Just as Wu Yan guessed, Alice originally planned to cut off all contact with Wu Yan and not have any more interactions with him. Yesterday's entanglement is nothing more than a wonderful dream. However, Alice hadn't thought that her idea would be seen through in advance, which led to Wu Yan using such a method. It had to be said that this method was indeed the best way to control Alice. At least, when Alice felt Wu Yan's hand getting closer and closer, she felt that her body was beginning to feel strange. Her mind kept replaying the scene of yesterday's lovemaking, and she couldn't bear it anymore. I know. Alice could only shout as if she had given up. "I forgive you. Is that okay?" Suddenly, Wu Yan's presumptuous hand stopped moving. A victorious smile appeared on his face, but he asked mischievously, "Really? You're not lying to me, right? Since I've already said it, then I won't lie." Alice's tone was filled with unwillingness and indignation. "So, let go of me immediately." "Ma, I believe my wife Sama's words." Wu Yan giggled. "You can't lie to me. Otherwise, next time, I won't stop, unless you have a way to hide from me forever." Hearing this, Alice, who had intended to be perfunctory, completely lost her temper. Hide from him forever? Whether it was Wu Yan or Alice, their lifespan was unlimited. It was basically impossible for them to die. In this life, if there were no accidents, they would definitely live forever. So, did Alice have the confidence to hide forever? The answer, of course, was no. Not to mention that Wu Yan had far more strength than Alice. He also had the ability to appear and disappear unpredictably. In addition, the fantasy town was so big, how could Alice hide from Wu Yan forever? And once she was found, Alice could imagine her fate. Alice was anxious, but there was nothing she could do. She could only sigh sullenly. "I understand. I won't hide from you. Let go of me." Hearing the resignation and helplessness in Alice's tone, Wu Yan shrugged and let go of Alice. Alice was caught off guard and almost fell to the ground. She glared at Wu Yan, snorting coldly. Alice was full of grievances and unwillingness. She angrily walked back to her home. Seeing this, Wu Yan quickly followed. "Why are you following me?" Well, don't be so cold. I'm already here. It doesn't matter if you treat me to a cup of tea. There's no tea for you to drink here. Go back. It's fine if you don't want to drink tea. I'll just go in and sit. I won't disturb you. Can't you just let me go?" How can I let you go? You're my lord wife. Who's your lord wife? Don't say that, lord old lady. Don't call me that. It's disgusting. Then, I'll call you Lily? Or I'll call you Cece? Then I'll call you AI. Do you want to die once? Chapter 1818. Fantasy Village, Red Devil Mansion. Holding a wrapped cake in his hand, Wu Yin hummed a song as he descended from the sky. He landed in front of the Red Devil Mansion and walked in the direction of the Red Devil Mansion. That cake was made by Wu Yin at Alice's house. Due to the way he asked Alice to forgive him being a little too shameless, it caused Alice to be very angry. Wu Yin also used all kinds of methods to make Alice happy. In the end, he used his best cooking skills to soothe Alice's cold and angry face. And this cake was made by Wu Yin when he made Alice happy. He was going to let everyone in the Red Devil Mansion try it. Speaking of which, Wu Yin had also made an agreement with Zui Yi that if he had the chance, he would personally cook a meal for them to try his cooking. Unfortunately, it was destroyed by the arrival of the 7 deadly sins. Now, although there was only one cake, with Wu Yin's cooking skills, Wu Yin believed that Ramilia and the others would definitely be satisfied. After passing through the lake of fog that was filled with cold fog, he walked towards the bright red mansion. Not long after, the iron gate outside the Red Devil Mansion appeared in front of Wu Yin. On the side of the iron gate, a red-haired girl in a green cheongsam was leaning against the wall. She stood there like a guard, guarding the gate outside the Red Devil Mansion. Taking a closer look, the young girl was wearing a green hat. On the front of the hat, there was a golden 5-pointed star pattern. In the middle of the 5-pointed star pattern, there was a glittering, sharp, throwing knife stuck on it like a target. Seeing this scene, Wu Yan's expression instantly became embarrassed. In the fantasy village, there were many people wearing strange clothes. It wasn't like there weren't any outlandish outfits like throwing knives and hats. Those who didn't know would think that the throwing knife was one of the decorations on the hat. Only the people of the Red Devil Mansion knew. It was just something left behind by a punching bag. The girl didn't seem to notice Wu Yan's approach. She just closed her eyes and gently leaned against the wall, as if she was very unfathomable, deliberately pretending to be so that others would let their guard down. However, reality was cruel. He must have fallen asleep again, right? Wu Yin exposed the truth of this scene without hesitation. He rubbed his eyebrows speechlessly, and from the looks of it, she must have been taught a lesson by San Yi just now. It's really amazing that she can immediately slack off and sleep. With that said, Wu Yin directly walked over, squinted his eyes, and shouted angrily, "China, time to eat. Have you eaten?" In China, the girl who was reading Hong Miling was like an awakened crocodile. She suddenly opened her eyes, and her eyes shone with unprecedented brightness. "Where's the food? Where is it? Miss Xiaoyi hasn't given me any food for 3 days." Hearing this, Wu Yin couldn't help but look at Hong Miling with pity. Hong Miling noticed it. There was no food, but the true master of the Red Devil Mansion was standing in front of her. Hong Miling's pretty face froze. Although, because of her position, Hong Miling had never interfered in the recent matters of the Red Devil Mansion. But as a member of the Red Devil Mansion, no matter how stupid Hong Miling was, it was impossible for her not to know what had happened in her family. Naturally, Hong Miling also knew that the man standing in front of her, who on the surface announced that he was the butler of the Red Devil Mansion, but in reality, he treated the master of the Red Devil Mansion as his younger sister. He had the most special status in the Red Devil Mansion, and sometimes he even had more influence than the young miss of the Red Devil Mansion. In other words, the man in front of her. Now, he was already a true celebrity in the Red Devil Mansion. Other than Ramilia, there was no one in the Red Devil Mansion who could use their status to suppress him, including the second young miss of the Red Devil Mansion. And when the time came, it was really necessary. Perhaps even the young miss of the Red Devil Mansion would listen to him. In addition, the other party was also the butler of the Red Devil Mansion in name, in charge of all the servants in the Red Devil Mansion, including the head maid. Hong Miling was shocked and stuttered. Bye, don't be white, China." Wu Yin couldn't help but roll his eyes. "Those who don't know would think that I've been chased out of the Red Devil Mansion. You're saying goodbye to me. You must be joking." Lure by. Hong Miling put on a fake smile and then weakly retorted. Also, Lord Bai, my name isn't China. Your name isn't China? Wu Yin pretended not to know. If your name isn't China, then what is your name? My name is Hong Miling. Hong Miling wanted to cry, but had no tears to shed. Lord Bai, please remember my name at least. Hong Miling. Wu Yin widened his eyes in surprise. Liar. Who is Hong Miling? How come I don't know? Wah. Lord Bai, how can you do this? Hong Miling seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. The corners of her eyes gradually became moist, and she looked like she was about to cry. Wu Yin couldn't help but laugh. All right. I'm just teasing you. Wu Yin took out a piece of the wrapped cake and handed it to Hong Miling. This is for you. Taken aback, Hong Miling received the cake in a daze, as if she couldn't believe that she would receive a present. It wasn't until the aroma of the cake wafted into Hong Miling's nose that she realized that this is all real. In the next second, Hong Miling's eyes flowed with tears. What's wrong? Wu Yin was shocked. Why are you crying? Wah. Hong Miling cried uncontrollably. Lord Bai, you're too good to me. This. Wu Yin was at a loss. It's just a piece of cake, isn't it? No one in the Scarlet Devil Mansion is this good to me. Hong Miling said emotionally. Forget about bringing me food. Miss Ruoyi often doesn't let me eat. I remember the longest time she did it. She directly deducted a month's worth of food. I was so hungry that I could only go to the fog lake to drink water. Is that so? Wu Yin laughed dryly. It's been hard on you. It's okay. Hong Miling wiped her tears and clenched her fists. She looked very encouraging. In the end, it's my fault for being lazy. I shouldn't have fallen asleep at the gate and let Miss Ruoyi find out. Next time, I must find a way to be lazy without Miss Ruoyi finding out. Ha! Wu Yan's mouth twitched. How dare you say you're researching a way to be lazy in front of me, the steward of the Scarlet Devil Mansion? China, you're quite bold. Hong Miling's motivational look was immediately petrified. Her face turned pale, as if she had just realized that her boss was right in front of her. Cold sweat dripped down her face. All right. I won't be like Sakuya and deduct your salary for slacking off. Wu Yin bitterly smiled and reminded her as he shook his head when he saw her face getting paler and paler. But next time, if I find out you're lazy, I won't bring you food anymore. Yes. Hong Miling stood up straight and saluted. Wu Yin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This China, if you're free, you should come out and play more. It's quite fun. Wu Yin pushed open the door of the Scarlet Devil Mansion and walked into the hall. Before he could take in the scene in front of him, an extremely excited voice sounded in front of him. Brother! Following this extremely excited shout, in front of him, on the platform, a small figure jumped into the air in an unrestrained manner. She drew a perfect parabola and threw herself at Wu Yin, who just walked in. As soon as he heard this voice, Wu Yin knew who it was. A helpless smile appeared on his face. He reached out and caught the small figure in his arms. Brother. As soon as she threw herself into Wu Yan's arms, the small head wearing a white beret with a light yellow ponytail started to rub against Wu Yan's chest. You're finally back. Fran thought you left with that naughty Lian. Wu Yin pushed Fran up a little, exposing Fran's delicate and cute face to him. He pinched her little nose dotingly. Did you think your brother would leave you alone? Fran enjoyed Wu Yan's affectionate and doting actions, twisting her little body like a spoiled child. Brother, you're so naughty. You made Fran worry. Is that so? Wu Yin carried Flanderchan, and he started walking towards the stairs. Then, in order to make up for Fran's worries, how about I give Fran a small gift? Sure. All right, Flan laughed. Chapter 1819. At this moment, Ramilia was sitting at the head of the round table on the platform. Raoyu was holding a tray, as usual, waiting by Ramilia's side. The two girls, one big and one small, presented an extremely beautiful scene. Ramilia snorted when she saw Wu Yin walking over with Flan in his arms. She didn't know why, but she snorted in a jealous manner. Why are you two so close? Ramilia still doesn't know how Wu Yin and Flan got to know each other. Compared to Wu Yin, Remilia is Flan's sister, and they've lived together for hundreds of years. Wu Yin and Flan are more like siblings. Wu Yin and Zui glanced at each other and smiled. They didn't need to say anything. Then, Wu Yin looked at Remilia and pursed his lips. Our relationship is definitely better than you think. In any case, Fran and I share our lives. Even if you, her biological sister, are here, you can't compare to us. How can a relationship that is supported by a contract be better than blood? Remilia retorted. As long as you stop sharing your lives with Fran, there will be nothing left. It's not like there's nothing left. Before Wu Yin could say anything, Fran stuck her tongue out at Remilia. Big brother loves Fran more than big sister. Fran loves big brother the most. Fran. Remilia was immediately enraged by her own sister's teasing, but all she got in return was a mischievous chuckle from Fran. Remilia felt extremely helpless in her heart. In fact, Remilia couldn't bear to see her sister being close to someone else. She could only lock Fran in the basement. Remilia felt that it was worth it to have Fran keep that cheerful smile on her face. So, instead of saying that Remilia couldn't bear to see Fran being close to someone else, she was jealous. Why couldn't she be the one to make Fran smile so cheerfully? Right now, Remilia is envious of Wu Yin and Flan's relationship. She's jealous, but she's not sure if she's jealous of Flan or Wu Yin. Maybe she's jealous of both. Why didn't you sleep today? He sat down beside Remilia with Fran in his arms. Wu Yin asked casually. It's not dark yet. If I don't sleep, I won't have the energy to hold the party tonight. I've already slept for so long. How can I sleep any longer? Remilia said with an exasperated expression. Isn't this all your fault? After the sin of gluttony passed, Remilia was so tired that she fell asleep. After the sin of lust, Remilia slept the entire day and only woke up this morning. How could she possibly sleep now? Say, didn't you go to the moon's bamboo forest? Remilia picked up her teacup and sipped her black tea. You didn't make things difficult for me this time, right? Do you need me to help you? No need. Forget it. Wu Yin shrugged. I've achieved my goal of going to the Forever Pavilion. I didn't drink any strange drugs, so don't worry. Wu Yin picked up his cake and spread it on the table. Come and try this cake. Cake. Remilia's hand paused. Zui also turned his gaze to the cake spread on the table. Both of them had a suspicious expression on their faces. It's not like Scarlet Devil Pavilion doesn't have a cake. Zui Yi made it himself. It's much better than the ones outside. Why did you buy a cake? I'm sorry. I didn't buy it. Wu Yin rolled his eyes at Remilia. I made it myself. You made it? Remilia was stunned. You made it yourself? A curious look appeared on Zui Ye's face. Big brother made a cake. Fran's eyes lit up as she reminisced about the taste of the cake. Fran wants to eat it. Fran hasn't eaten a cake made by brother in a long time. I made it for you. Wu Yin divided the cake into several portions. He waved at Zui Yi and took a tray from him. He took out a few small plates. I wanted to make you a good meal last time, but the plan didn't keep up with the changes. Try this cake first. I'll cook for you in the future if I have the chance. Wu Yin put a few pieces of cake on the small plates. He put one in front of Remilia, one in front of Fran and himself, and one on the table next to him. He looked at Zui Yi. Zui Yi, you should try it too. This. Zui Yi was hesitant. Sakuyi is very curious about the taste of Wu Yan's cake. However, Sakuyi still placed herself in the position of a servant. As a maid, she can't just sit at the same table as her master. In the entire Scarlet Devil Mansion, Wu Yin is the only one who would sit down and chat with Remilia. Even Patrice would have to look at the occasion to do so. Remilia was the same. In front of outsiders, she might consider her dignity and wouldn't let Zui Yi sit at the same table with her. But now, there were no outsiders, so Remilia was much more open-minded. Zui Yi, sit down and try it. Yes, young mistress. Zui didn't hesitate and sat beside Wu Yin. Together with Remilia, they picked up a fork, forked a piece of cake, and put it into their mouths. A spicy sweetness spread between Remilia and Zui Yi's mouths. The cake melted in their mouths and flowed into their stomachs like flowing water. The two young ladies couldn't help but reveal expressions of enjoyment. This cake. Remilia was surprised, and said with uncertainty, "Did you really make this cake? What else could it be?" Wu Yin blinked as though he had expected this reaction from Remilia. "Have you ever eaten a cake that tastes like this in Fantasy Village?" "Indeed, I've never eaten this flavor." Remilia tasted it with relish. Not bad. For the prideful Remilia to say something like, "not bad," it meant that she was very satisfied. On the other hand, Zuiyi savored the cake seriously and nodded after a long time. "It's really delicious. Oni Ai-chan." Flan looked at Wu Yin with a pitiful expression while holding a plate filled with cake. "What's wrong?" Wu Yin looked at Flan with an amused expression. "You want Big Brother to feed you again." Fran nodded hurriedly, and Wu Yin couldn't help but pat her head. Then, he picked up the small plate in Fran's hand and started feeding her. Almost at the same time, Wu Yin felt an intense gaze accompanied by a sense of longing cast on Wu Yin. Then, Wu Yin saw Remilia turning her head away. At this point, how could Wu Yin not understand? Wu Yin picked up Remilia, who was sitting at the head of the table. She and Flan sat on his lap, one on his left and one on his right. Remilia was stupefied. She couldn't believe that Wu Yin would do such a thing. "Come." Wu Yin forked the cake and placed it in front of Remilia with a grin. "Ah, you." Remilia frowned and yelled angrily. "Don't treat me like a child. I don't treat you like a child. I only treat you as a younger sister who needs to be doted on." Wu Yin continued with a smile. "Come on, woo-woo." Remilia squirmed. In the end, she couldn't resist the longing in her heart and muttered unwillingly, "One day, I will make you look at me in a different light." Remilia obediently opened her mouth and bit down on the cake. She looked like she was angry, but she also looked like she was enjoying the cake. Wu Yin couldn't help but chuckle. Sakuya also giggled at the side. "Right?" Wu Yin recalled something. "Where's Patsy? Why don't I see her?" "Patsy usually won't come out if there's nothing important," Remilia replied. Then, she puckered her brows and her gaze turned strange. "Why are you calling Patsy Patsy?" "Ugh." Wu Yin choked and didn't know how to explain. Should he tell Remilia that he had sex with Patsy and their relationship got better? It would be strange if Remilia didn't flip out. Chapter 1820. Scarlet Devil Mansion Underground Library. Carrying the remaining cake in his hand, Wu Yin arrived at the underground library, Patrice's territory. Ever since he had intercourse with Patrice on the last day of the 7 deadly sins, Wu Yin hadn't seen Patrice even once. Although it had only been a day, a young lady who had just intercourse was undoubtedly the easiest to worry about personal gains and losses. She was also the one who needed the company of a man the most. Patrice might seem calm and collected, but she was still a young lady and couldn't exclude the possibility of her having similar feelings. Ever since Wu Yin devoured Patrice clean, most of his thoughts were either on how to survive the last day of the 7 deadly sins or on how to obtain a drop of eternal blood essence from the everlasting pavilion. He didn't have the opportunity to see Patrice. If he didn't see Patrice, perhaps even Wu Yin wouldn't be able to forgive himself. After pushing open the door of Patrice's library and entering the underground library, an extremely dense aura assaulted his senses. Generally speaking, a place where a young lady stayed would have a fragrance that belonged to her. However, Patrice's library didn't have a fragrance that belonged to her. Instead, there was an extremely pungent smell. That was the essence of this extremely dense aura. It was the smell of books. Wu Yin wasn't a lover of books, but he didn't dislike books either. Even if the smell of books in the library was too dense, he wouldn't reject it. After taking in a light breath and adapting to the smell, he entered the library. On the first day he entered the library, Wu Yin discovered that there were many precious magic books that he hadn't grasped. They weren't even among the 103,000 magic books. Ever since then, whenever Wu Yin has the time, he would come here to look at these grimoires and memorize the magical knowledge and theories contained in them until now. Even if he didn't memorize everything, he had at least memorized 60% to 70% of it. At Wu Yan's level, being able to use magic could no longer increase his strength. At the very least, the increase wouldn't be too obvious. However, who would complain about having too many tricks up their sleeves. Wu Yin had already decided to visit the library more often in the coming days. On one hand, he would accompany Patrice, and on the other hand, he would strive to read all the witchcraft books in the library, to strengthen his knowledge and theories of magic. Of course, this was all in the future. Today, Wu Yin didn't come here to read books. After passing through those ridiculously huge bookshelves, Wu Yin didn't head for Patrice's room. Instead, he moved towards a corner of the library. Under normal circumstances, Patrice wouldn't be in the room. Instead, she would be reading in a corner, because in that corner there was a desk. Given Patula's personality, that would be. He must be reading there, right? Not long after, Wu Yin came to the corner and saw a figure with his back facing him, sitting in front of a desk piled with books. There was a lamp hanging on the left. Using the weak light, Patrice lowered her head and read the book in her hand. Under the faint illumination of the lamplight, Patrice was clad in purple and lavender stripes. She wore a lavender robe with lotus leaves at the hem, looking extremely fluffy and comfortable. Her pajama-like robe flickered like flames. It looked extremely illusory. She was still wearing a round nightcap with a flouncy edge and a crescent-shaped ornament on it. Her robe and hat were adorned with blue and red ribbons. Her long purple hair casually draped over her shoulders. At this moment, Patrice was holding a book in one hand and flipping the pages from time to time with the other. She emitted a calm and tranquil temperament. Not a single noise could be heard in the underground library. Only the rustling of pages could be heard. Under such circumstances, Wu Yan's footsteps were extremely clear. It was impossible for Patrice not to hear them. Thus, at a certain moment, Patrice stopped flipping through the book and turned around. Her beautiful and tranquil face wearing spectacles was exposed to Wu Yan's eyes. Like Alice, Patrice was no longer a pure and innocent girl. Her body had undergone considerable changes. This change could only be discovered by careful observation. If one didn't observe carefully, they would only discover that Patrice seemed to have become more beautiful than before. Seeing Wu Yin standing in the middle of the bookshelf, Patrice was startled and astonished. "Why are you here? What's the matter?" Wu Yin frowned. "You don't want me to come?" In the past, Wu Yin would definitely not say such words to Patrice. Patrice also felt that she wouldn't have the chance to hear such words from a man of the opposite sex. Because wouldn't it be too flirtatious? Hearing these flirtatious words, Patrice seemed to recall that her relationship with this man before her was already extraordinary. At this moment, Patrice's heartbeat sped up uncontrollably, making her slightly flustered. She could only push down her spectacles and secretly suppress her uncontrollable heartbeat. "I just didn't think that you would look for me for no reason. Aren't you treating me as a fickle person?" Wu Yin said helplessly and raised the cake in his hand. "Well, if gifting a cake is considered a matter, then I do have a matter to discuss with you." "Cake?" As expected, Patrice was taken aback and tilted her head. "Did you make it last night?" "But I didn't say I wanted to eat cake. Even though I know you will think that way, can't you think of other possibilities?" Wu Yin sighed. "For example, this cake was made by me. You made it." Patrice was taken aback. "It can't be. I am curious as to how you viewed me before. Why are you so surprised by my cake?" Wu Yin rolled his eyes at Patrice and brought the cake to her side. "Give a try." As Wu Yin approached, Patrice's suppressed heartbeat swelled and became louder. She no longer dared to look at Wu Yan's face. She turned her head and looked at the cake Wu Yin brought. "Then I'll have a taste." Patrice extended her hand to take the cake, but discovered that Wu Yin had already taken it away. Patrice looked up suspiciously and saw Wu Yan's smile that wasn't a smile. "I say, Patrice, your act of treating the cake as more important than me will only make me sad." "What are you talking about?" Patrice couldn't help but blush. "I just want to try the cake." "Is that so?" Wu Yan's lips curled into an arc that made Patrice panic. At the same time, he said something that made Patrice flabbergasted. "Then, I want to hear you say that you love me first." Patrice widened her eyes in anger. "How can I say that? Why can't you say it?" Wu Yin stooped down and inched his face closer to Patrice's. "Or rather, Do you prefer to prove it with your actions? W, what are you trying to do? Patrice stood up hurriedly as Wu Yan's face inched closer. However, she accidentally bumped into a chair and fell backward. But before she fell, Wu Yan held her waist and pulled her into his embrace. Patrice felt a little dizzy when she sensed the familiar yet foreign male aura. She placed her hands in front of Wu Yan's chest as she muttered with a flushed face. Don't do this. Don't do this, Wu Yan said in a mischievous manner. Don't do what? Patrice bit her lips, and she glared at Wu Yan with an annoyed expression. Let me go first. No, Wu Yan said as though it was a matter of fact. Unless you say that you love me. Don't tease me, Patrice said helplessly. If you tease me again, I will really get angry. Rather than seeing you treat me coldly, I would rather see you angry. Wu Yan pressed his forehead against Patrice's. Besides, can you really get angry? Patrice couldn't take it anymore. I really can't say it. Is that so? Wu Yan said in disappointment. All right then. Patrice thought Wu Yan was going to let her off, but Wu Yan suddenly hugged her. Since you can't say it, then use your actions to prove it. Wu Yan tossed Patrice on the desk, and he pounced on her amidst her shrieks. The sound of panting and moaning resounded in the library. Chapter 1821. Humph, 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 humph. In a corner of the Red Devil Mansion's underground library, Little Fiend flapped her bat-like, demonic wings and fluttered her long red hair. She happily hummed a song while holding old books as she flew towards Patrice. Little Fiend was indeed very happy. At least, compared to the people of the Red Devil Mansion, Little Fiend had been living a rather carefree and comfortable life. Because Little Fiend was Patrice's familiar and not Remilia's servant, even Remilia couldn't use a commanding tone to order Little Fiend around. Furthermore, the scale of the Red Devil Mansion's underground library was simply too large. The amount of books that needed to be organized every day was like a mountain. No matter how she organized them, she couldn't finish organizing them. Thus, Patrice gave Little Fiend a fixed job to organize these books. Under such circumstances, the little devil dared to say that he was the most relaxed person in the Red Devil Mansion during this period of time. While Wu Yan was suffering from the sin of being arrogant and expressing his vile arrogance to the people of the Red Devil Mansion, Little Fiend was organizing books in the library. While Wu Yan was suffering from the sin of jealousy, causing Remilia to send the entire Red Devil Mansion out to search for him. She even went to rescue Marissa while she was at it. The imp was organizing books in the library, while Wu Yan was suffering from the sin of being furious and chasing Marissa around the Red Devil Mansion, wantonly destroying everything in the Red Devil Mansion and causing a commotion. Little Fiend was organizing books in the library, while Wu Yan was suffering from the sin of being lazy and letting Xiao Yi take care of him. While Remilia, Fran, and Patrice were searching for him, Little Fiend was organizing books in the library, while Wu Yan was suffering from the sin of being greedy and attracting the people of Earth Spirit Hall. While the girls of the Red Devil Mansion and Earth Spirit Hall were having a battle of attire, Little Fiend was organizing books in the library, while Wu Yan was suffering from the sin of being gluttonous. While the people of the Red Devil Mansion and Earth Spirit Hall were busy satisfying their appetites and taking care of him, Little Fiend was organizing books in the library. While Wu Yan is suffering from the sin of asterisk asterisk, he pushed down on her master, Patrice, without her knowledge. Meanwhile, Imp is still organizing her books in the library. In other words, Wu Yan was suffering from the 7 sins and causing a lot of trouble. While the people of the Red Devil Mansion were half-dead tired, Little Fiend was the only one alone was not involved. Little Fiend was organizing books in the library as usual. How could Little Fiend not have a carefree life? Therefore, Little Devil was very happy and glad that she didn't get involved in those disputes because of her work. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to survive. Otherwise, she would be half dead, tired. One must know that this wasn't the first time the Little Devil witnessed Patrice returning to the library with a fatigued expression, and for the first time, she didn't stay up late to read. She fell asleep immediately. Of course, If Little Fiend knew that the reason why Patrice fell asleep immediately after returning to the library was because she had been pushed by Wu Yin for who knows how many rounds, would Little Fiend still feel happy? Actually, it could be said that Little Fiend was dreaming. Apart from Ling Ming, Little Fiend hated Wu Yin the most. However, Ling Ming hated Wu Yin because she was afraid that Wu Yin would cause trouble. Little Fiend hated Wu Yin because she felt that Wu Yin was dangerous. Little Fiend faintly felt that if her master, Patrice, were to recklessly approach Wu Yin, she would definitely suffer in the end. Although this was just her intuition, reality proved that Little Fiend's intuition was very accurate. It was so accurate that Little Fiend didn't know that her master had already suffered huge loss. Little Fiend, who was completely unaware of this matter, could only make a decision to not have too much contact with Wu Yin. She also couldn't allow Patrice to have too much contact with Wu Yin. With this thought, Little Fiend carried a pile of books that Patrice wanted to read. She continued to hum as she flew towards the place where Patrice was reading. However, when Little Fiend followed the path and arrived near the place where Patrice was reading, a strange sound suddenly entered Little Fiend's ears. She stopped in her tracks. This voice. It's Lady Patrice's voice. Hearing that strange voice, Little Fiend tilted her head and muttered to herself in astonishment. But why is Lady Patrice's voice so strange? Strange? It was indeed strange, because Little Fiend heard Patrice moaning and moaning without any reason. It sounded like the cry of a cuckoo. Little Fiend's heartbeat sped up for some reason, and her face flushed red. Lady Patrice couldn't possibly be. Little Fiend wasn't embarrassed to say the word comfort. Instead, she found it hard to imagine. With Patrice's personality, how could she possibly do such a thing? But if that wasn't the case, why would Patrice moan like that? Little Fiend had been by Patrice's side for decades, if not a century. No one was more familiar with Patrice than Little Fiend. Little Fiend didn't dare to believe that Patrice would do such an unbearable thing. Little Fiend didn't know if it was out of curiosity or her instincts. She gently placed down the pile of books in her hands and tiptoed to the back of a bookshelf. She peeked her head out and looked at the corner where Patrice was reading. In the next moment, an unimaginable scene and extremely chaotic moans entered the little evil demon's eyes and ears at the same time, causing the little evil demon to be stunned on the spot. She saw Patrice lying naked on her desk with her buttocks sticking out. Her charming face was flushed red, and she was moaning uncontrollably. Behind Patrice was a similarly naked person. He was holding Patrice's slender waist and constantly ramming into Patrice. He had a wicked smile on his face, seemingly satisfied and pleased. It was a man. Moreover, it was a man that Little Fiend was extremely familiar with. It was Wu Yin whom Little Fiend was on guard against. Little Fiend completely forgot about her blushing face and stood there in a daze. Rather than saying that she was in disbelief, it would be more accurate to say that she was absent-minded, as though she had lost her soul. Why? How could this be? What's going on? Similar questions kept popping up in Little Devil's mind. However, Little Fiend didn't attempt to answer them. Her mind was already in a daze from this unimaginable scene. Her heart was a mess, and she didn't react for a long time. But no matter how unwilling Little Fiend was to believe that this was reality, reality wouldn't change because of her hesitation. After an unknown period of time, Patrice's panting became more hurried, and the banging sounds became more frequent. Until a certain moment, Patrice couldn't help but beg for mercy. Only then did the man who was lovingly caressing Patrice stop his actions and send her to the climax. Pa! Patrice was like a doll with its strings cut. She slumped on her desk, unable to get up again. Wu Yin laid on Patrice's back and whispered something in her ears. After Patrice absent-mindedly nodded her head, he nodded in satisfaction and stood up to wear his clothes. Seeing this, the little devil subconsciously held his breath, lowered his presence, and hid in a dark corner. Not long after, Wu Yin wore his clothes and left with a satisfied expression as though he had just come out of a hot spring. Little Fiend walked out of the dark corner and looked at the desk. Patrice didn't have a trace of strength and was curled into a ball like a lazy kitten. She was moaning softly, and it was apparent that she hadn't recovered yet. Compared to Patrice's charming and lazy posture, little fiend seemed as though she had met with the end of the world as she slowly collapsed to the ground. Pushing him down was such a simple matter. As a demon, little fiend naturally knew of such a wicked thing. However, she hadn't experienced it personally. Therefore, little fiend silently shed tears when she saw Patrice's comfortable appearance. In the end, she didn't protect Miss Patrice well and allowed Miss Patrice to be devoured by that repulsive vampire true ancestor. At this moment, little fiend's heart was filled with such a sentence. I am guilty. Chapter 1822. The next day, after completing his work in the Red Devil Mansion and feeding breakfast to Ramilia and Fran as usual, Wu Yin informs Yi, left the Red Devil Mansion, and flew into the sky outside. Today, Wu Yin wanted to make a trip to the Bori Shrine. It wasn't that Wu Yin missed Ling Ming and wanted to see her, but he wanted to obtain a drop of blood from Ling Ming. A drop of blood essence that contains the power of fantasy. Now, Wu Yin had obtained blood essence that contains the power of time and blood essence that contains the power of eternity. Of these two drops of blood essence, one was the blood of Zuyi, who had the ability to control time, and the other was the blood of Mount Penglai's Huiyi, who had the ability to control eternity. It was precisely because Zuiyi and Mount Penglai's Huiyi had such abilities that their blood contained the so-called power of time and eternity. Then, there was a problem. If he wanted to obtain blood essence that contains the power of fantasy, he had to find an existence with an ability related to fantasy and obtain a drop of blood from them. But in the fantasy village, who had the ability related to fantasy? Wu Yin filtered through the list of famous existences in the fantasy village in his mind and finally locked onto Ling Ming. What kind of ability does Ling Ming have? If this question was asked to the people and monsters in the fantasy village, they would definitely give Wu Yin a look of disdain and say such a sentence. Is there a need to say it? Of course, it's an invincible ability. This was the understanding of the people and monsters in the fantasy village of the Bori Shrine. However, if one really wanted to talk about it, Ling Ming didn't have a representative ability like many famous existences in the fantasy village. Ling Ming had many abilities. For example, she had the invincible ability of opaque, transparent person. There is also the ability of God's reliance, which could allow gods to possess her. She had the ability to display unimaginable combat strength. Other than that, there are all kinds of abilities, big and small. For example, the ability to control spirit energy, the ability to fly autonomously, the ability to seal and purify, and so on. Of these abilities, some were useless in battle and could only be used to assist Ling Ming's actions. However, some were so powerful that it was difficult to find any other ability that could compare to them. Furthermore, basically, there are all kinds of them. If the characters in a fantasy village had a bug-like ability, then Ling Ming had a bunch of bug-like abilities. Then, with so many abilities, what kind of power does Ling Ming's blood contain? Wu Yin felt that it was very likely to be the so-called fantasy power. Wu Yin doesn't know what this fantasy power is like. Plus, Ling Ming has never used any ability related to fantasy before, so logically speaking, she should be able to use it. He should not be on the list. However, most of Ling Ming's rune cards had fantasy or dream as prefixes or endings. Furthermore, Ling Ming was the manager of Fantasy Village on the surface. Thus, Wu Yin felt that the so-called blood essence with fantasy power should be Ling Ming's blood essence. Of course, this was just a guess. Whether it was true or not, it still needed to be verified. As for the method to verify it, it was simple. As long as he could obtain a drop of Ling Ming's blood. If Ling Ming's blood was really blood essence with fantasy power, then the system would automatically identify the item and feed back its information to Wu Yin. No matter what, this trip to the Boli Shrine was destined to be carried out. But will Ling Ming be willing to give me a drop of her blood? Wu Yin didn't feel confident. I have a feeling that Ling Ming will not be so easily convinced by me, sighing faintly, Wu Yin did not use spatial teleportation. Instead, he thought of a way to convince Ling Ming while flying towards the Boli shrine. In the end, Wu Yin could only think of a way. Give Ling Ming another bag of gold coins. To deal with those without integrity, the only way to deal with them is to use the same method. Wu Yin had already grasped the essence of this method. After a while, Wu Yin's field of vision began to widen. A shrine at the end of a long stone staircase appeared before his eyes. However, to Wu Yan's surprise, on the stone staircase below the Boli shrine, a young girl riding a broom was flying at a low altitude. She was desperately chasing after a black shadow that was also flying at a low altitude. That is, seeing this scene, Wu Yin was slightly surprised. Marissa and paparazzi went? That's right, the young girl riding the broom could only be Marissa. In the entire fantasy village, only Marissa would be able to fly on a broom. The black shadow that Marissa was chasing after was the one Wu Yin had previously tied up in the magic forest. Floating in the air, Wu Yin could clearly hear Marissa's hysterical cries as she chased after Marissa. Wen, stop right there. Facing Marissa's hysterical roar, Marksman Maru flew past her at a speed that would never allow Marissa to catch up to him. Moreover, he even turned his head and laughed heartily. It's useless. Marissa, you can't catch up to me. Who has the time to care about whether I can catch up or not? Marissa's expression was sinister. If I don't chase after you, then there will be a problem. Marissa, are you that anxious to see your own report? Saimaru shook his head as he spoke. Although I'm very grateful that you're looking forward to one, Wynn's daily newspaper, it will only be distributed tomorrow. Marissa, you should return home and wait. Who's going to wait? Marissa shouted. I am not looking forward to your paparazzi daily newspaper. Not only that, I will tear apart your broken camera. That's impossible. Sensei Maruin laughed out loud. I've already been tricked by that Yakumo Haku several times. This time I must write this report. Marissa, just give up. Don't even think about writing that nonsense. Marissa seemed to have ignited a small universe as her speed increased by several levels. Watch me shoot you and that stupid camera through with one shot. If you can do it, then try. Instantly, Marissa and Sensei Marifumi started playing cat and mouse on top of the Bori shrine. Wu Yin got a better idea of what's going on when he saw this. Marissa must be the paparazzi voyeur that Marissa caught some scandal material and took a crucial photo. And the main character of this photo is Marissa. Looking at Moise's hysterical appearance, Sensei Maru must have taken an incredible photo to make Moise so crazy. Thus, Wu Yin became curious. What kind of photo did the paparazzi take to make Marissa chase after it so desperately? Out of curiosity, Wu Yin teleported himself to the front of Kamikaze Maru. Before Sensei Maru could react, Wu Yin lifted him up like a chicken and dangled him in front of Wu Yin. I have to say, this paparazzi crow of yours is quite heavy. It's you? Marissa was startled when he saw the person who lifted him up. Then, as if meeting his natural enemy, he shrunk his head back. Why are you here? Marissa. At the same time, Marissa also flew over like the wind. She braked and stopped in front of Wu Yin and Marissa. She was riding a broom, but it looked like she had run a long distance. She was panting heavily. I caught you. I'm the one who caught this paparazzi crow. Not you, black-white Quinn. Wu Yin said with a grin. Marissa looked like she only just noticed him. She was stunned for a moment before shouting like a demon. It's you. At this moment, Marissa looked like a police detective who was chasing after the murderer of a murder case. Moreover, the person she was chasing was only an accomplice of the murder case. Only now did she find a real murderer. Wu Yin couldn't help but feel a bit confused. He wasn't the paparazzi's superior, and he didn't send him to take pictures. How did he become the murderer and the paparazzi an accomplice? Marissa yelled as she pounced at Wu Yin. I'll kill you. Chapter 1823. Some time ago, when Wu Yin and Alice were having a conflict because of some harmonious and loving matters, Marissa was tricked by Sensei Maru. In the end, she just happened to bump into Wu Yan's muzzle. That wasn't the most important thing. The key point was that Marissa didn't do anything at that time. Instead, she put on a very gossipy appearance. This made Wu Yin, who was worried about being interrogated, directly teleported Marissa away using space transfer. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve over. At that time, Wu Yin didn't have an exact location to teleport Marissa to. He only wanted her to leave quickly. Thus, he randomly found a relatively distant coordinate and teleported her there. Because of this, Marissa met with a tragedy. Marissa was teleported to the human realm. Moreover, she was teleported to the human realm, to the home of a teacher who seemed to have a very big background. Unfortunately, at that time, the teacher seemed to be taking a bath. While taking a bath, he seemed to have thought of something and directly walked out of the bathroom naked and ran around the living room of his home. As a result, Marissa, who happened to be transferred over, saw with her own eyes the scene of her teacher running naked in her own home. As the saying goes, when an ordinary man gets angry, blood splatters 5 steps away. The teacher flipped out on the spot. It was said that on that day, Marissa was punished to kneel in that teacher's home for an entire day. Moreover, that teacher's saliva flew everywhere as he preached. It was said that in order to block Marissa's big mouth, that teacher didn't calm down. The next day, not only did he not let Marissa leave, he even made her go to that teacher's place to take care of a group of brats. It was said that in order to take care of those brats, Marissa even had to personally clean up their urine and feces. She was miserable for an entire day. It was said that this morning, that teacher even made Marissa clean up the feces pit. He said that she could leave after cleaning up the feces pit. It was said that in order to not let those brats' stolen goods dirty her dashing black and white clothes, Marissa was overjoyed and stripped naked. Then, there was Sensei Maru, who happened to go to the human realm to obtain materials, coincidentally saw this scene. He was extremely lucky to have witnessed this scene and was overjoyed at the unexpected good news, so he took a picture of it. Thus, the picture of Marissa naked and cleaning the place where a bunch of brats peed, and peed was fresh. Ha ha! Wu Yin burst into laughter after hearing the whole story from Sensei Maru. He laughed so hard that tears almost came out. The unfortunate black and white is indeed the unfortunate black and white. To think that he would encounter such a ridiculous situation. What should I say to you? Ha ha ha! You're laughing. How dare you laugh? Marissa was tightly bound by chains flickering with a faint purple light that extended from the surrounding space ripples. Hanging in midair, she struggled with all her might while shouting angrily. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been punished by Hueen to take care of a bunch of kids. It's all your fault. That's funny. Like I said, I didn't transfer you to that Kane Sensei's house on purpose. I even did it while she was running around naked. Wu Yin couldn't help but laugh. At the end of the day, it's still your bad luck, black and white. If you had 1/10 of that red and white's luck, you definitely wouldn't be so unlucky to have bumped into this paparazzi crow. You must have been chosen by some god who controls misfortune. Marissa was stunned and couldn't find any words to refute. In the end, she could only hang her head dejectedly. I've already explained everything. On the other side, Sensei Maru carefully protected his camera and looked at Wu Yin with vigilance. Can I go now? Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Wu Yin asked suspiciously. Am I that scary? Sensei Maru laughed dryly. If you can promise me that you won't tamper with my camera in the future, I won't be afraid of you. Sensei Maru, who fell into Wu Yan's hands twice and had his important report material taken away by Wu Yan, was afraid that Wu Yan would target his negatives. That's why he was so wary of Wu Yan. Wu Yan couldn't help but feel annoyed. Don't worry, as long as it's not related to me. I won't touch your camera. Hearing this, Markomaru heaved a sigh of relief. Then, I'll go back to write the report first. Excuse me. After saying that, Saimai Merwin didn't even say goodbye and planned to fly away. Seeing this, Marissa became anxious. If Sensei Maru successfully escapes, then tomorrow, the news of Marissa cleaning a manure pit naked will spread throughout the entire utopia. At that time, Marissa felt that she simply didn't need to mingle in Fantasy Village, nor did she need to go out to meet people. She might as well just die. Before Marissa could react, Wu Yin grabbed Sensei Marifumi by his collar and dragged him towards Wu Yin, who was about to fly away. Wait, don't leave in such a hurry. You're going back on your word. Sensei Maru thought Wu Yin was going to touch his negatives again and struggled desperately. This time, don't even think about taking away my important report material. Who cares about the unfortunate black and white scene of cleaning a cesspool naked? Wu Yin pursed his lips. I just want you to do me a favor. Favor? Shudamaru stopped struggling. Even Marissa forgot about the fact that she might lose her reputation. She looked at Wu Yin curiously. What favor? Before that, answer me a question. Wu Yin touched his chin and asked. As the strongest existence in Fantasy Village purely in terms of speed, paparazzi, can you take someone's blood before they can react at all? Take blood. Sensei Maru was stunned. Is the Scarlet Devil Mansion starving you, so you have to come out to find blood to drink? I'm not taking blood to drink. Wu Yin rolled his eyes. Just tell me if you can do it or not. That depends on who it is. Sensei Maru answered honestly and puffed out his chest. Usually, as long as it's not someone much stronger than me, I should be able to secretly insert a needle into their body and take some blood. It shouldn't be difficult. Then, Wu Yin pondered for a moment. What if this person isn't very strong normally, but he can become stronger during a fight and is quite slow? Not very strong normally, can become stronger in a fight, is quite slow. Sensei Maru's mouth twitched. Why do I feel like this person is very familiar? Even Marissa, who had an IQ of less than 9, was stunned, let alone Kimui Marumi. This person, could it be? That's right. Wu Yin didn't hide anything. It's Ling Ming. As soon as his voice fell, Shooting Life Maru immediately turned into an afterimage and flew out, as if he was fleeing. Wu Yin, who had anticipated Sensei Maru's reaction, waved his hand, and a spatial ripple appeared in front of Sensei Maru. Sensei Marifumi dove into the spatial ripple, and he appeared beside Wu Yin in an instant. Wu Yin caught him. Wu Yin grabbed Sensei Marifumi. Let me go. Sensei Maru struggled to get up. If you want to die, go ahead. Don't drag me down with you. Die. Wu Yin resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Are you exaggerating? That's because you don't know what Ling Ming is like when she's angry. Sensei Maru shouted. If I really do that, Ling Ming will definitely be so angry that she'll kick me out. Before I dedicate my life to the great god of news, how can I die? It's just a drop of blood. You're exaggerating. Wu Yin said calmly. Aren't you very fast? It's useless no matter how fast I am. Even if I can get close to Ling Ming without her noticing, I won't be able to get a drop of blood from her. Sensei Maru said bitterly. In the Fantasy Village, Ling Ming is invincible. Every attack that could hurt Ling Ming is ineffective. Even if it's just a needle, Ling Ming may feel pain, but who knows if it will cause her to bleed. That's true. Wu Yin frowned before relaxing his brows. No matter what, we have to try. Without giving Sensei Maru a chance to protest, Wu Yin grabbed Sensei Maru with one hand and Marissa with the other and walked toward the Bori Shrine. Chapter 1824. Fantasy Village, Bori Shrine. In front of the shrine, Wu Yin, Marissa, and Sensei Marifumi stood side by side. They stared at the door in silence for a while. Are you really going to do this? Marissa lowered her voice and spoke softly. Even though I don't want to admit it, Soul Dream is very scary when she's angry. Basically, no one can suppress her. Do you really dare to stab her with a needle? No matter what, let's try it first. Wu Yin also lowered his voice. Anyways, when Akane gets angry, I'll just throw her a bag of gold coins. That will definitely calm her down. Then why don't you just throw a bag of gold coins to Soul Dream and have her give you a drop of blood? Sensei Marifuge grumbled. That way, we won't have to take such a big risk, right? That's true. Wu Yin scratched his cheek. But I have a feeling that we'll fail if we do that. Why? Marissa asked doubtfully. Soul Dream loves money so much. She should be happy to exchange a drop of blood for a pile of money, right? But compared to money, that Akane hates trouble more, right? Wu Yin rubbed his forehead as if he had a headache. I don't know if that Akane thinks that stabbing herself with a needle is troublesome. Even if it isn't, I don't think it's very reliable. So you want us to challenge Soul Dream's bottom line with you? Saimaru was still grumbling. I really have to hand it to you. In Fantasy Village, other than a certain brainless person, there's no one else. This is the first time I've seen someone so eager to challenge the Bori Shrine. Brainless? Marissa rubbed her head and looked around. Who? Which brainless fellow would be so eager to challenge Ling Ming? Wu Yin and Shudamaru are speechless. They ignored Marissa. They looked at each other. Are you really going to do this? Takamaru's face fell. Then can you do it yourself? A smile appeared on Wu Yan's face, but he didn't say anything. He raised his hand. The camera, which was as important as his life, was placed on his hand, making him lose his temper on the spot. All right. At that moment, Seomaru decided to throw caution to the wind. I'm a diligent reporter. For my news material, let's fight. Don't even think about it. Marissa immediately became spirited. Earlier, Wu Yin had said that the camera would belong to whoever could obtain a drop of blood from Ling Ming. Therefore, the Marissa was also burning. For my reputation, I'll do it too. The two girls immediately looked at each other, as if sparks had been ignited. Sizzling sounds that sounded like electric currents colliding rang out in the air. Immediately, Marissa and Sensei Maru tiptoed towards the entrance of the shrine. Hey! Sensei Maru cautiously beckoned to Wu Yin, who was standing behind them. Later, go open the door and check the situation inside. Then, use your strength to open the door. The moment you open the door, I will rush in as fast as I can. Marissa giggled eagerly. Feels like it's going to be fun. Hearing that, Wu Yin could not help but shake his head. Moving past the cautious figures of Sensei Maru and Marissa, he arrived before the door. Gently, he pulled the door open. Marissa was already seated on her broom. Sensei Maru was also floating in the air. The two of them had a serious expression and their bodies were tense, waiting for Wu Yin to open the door and rush in to give Ling Ming a taste of her own medicine. However, Marissa and Sensei Maru did not notice that and gently opened the door. Casting his gaze into the shrine, Wu Yan's mouth twitched. The shrine was completely silent. Not even the slightest sound could be heard. No, it should be said, it was so quiet that only an extremely faint sound could be heard. A snoring sound. Inside the kotatsu at the center of the shrine, Wu Yin, Marissa, and Sensei Marifomi are being very careful. The target they are planning to ambush is lying on the ground with his arms and legs spread out. He's sleeping so soundly that he didn't even notice that someone is trying to ambush him. Seeing this scene, Wu Yin was silent. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. He really felt like a fool. Why would he be so fearful of such a person? Why would he come up with so many tricks and get two helpers? On the other side, Moiza, who was completely oblivious to the situation inside the shrine, tensed up and prepared to rush into the shrine at any moment, nervously asked, "How is it? Did Ling Ming discover us?" "You need to be careful," Sensei Maru reminded. Under normal circumstances, Ling Ming's strength may not be high, but her intuition is frighteningly strong. Be careful. Don't get discovered. Hearing Marissa and Sensei Maru's words, Wu Yin felt much better. Fortunately, if I'm stupid, then there are people who are even more stupid than me. Are you done? Sensei Maru couldn't help but ask. If you're done, then open the door. I'll rush in as fast as I can, and before Ling Ming can react, I'll escape as fast as I can. If that happens, even Ling Ming won't be able to do anything. Although I also want to do it openly with Princess Ling Ming. The Magus-san grinned and laughed. But for the sake of my reputation, I'll let it go this time. Next time, I'll have a proper round with Ling Ming. Wu Yin was now certain. These two are really stupid. At that moment, Wu Yin ignored Marissa and Sensei Maru and walked into the shrine under the startled looks of the two girls. Hey, Sensei Maru didn't bother to lower his voice and called out, "Are you crazy?" "Oh," Marissa also cried out. "Little brother from the Yakumo family, are you not planning to sneak around and face Ling Ming head-on? I have high hopes for you." The two girls noticed that Wu Yin had walked into the shrine, but there wasn't the slightest bit of commotion. Even if the sneak attack didn't start and Ling Ming didn't know that Wu Yin was planning to attack her, she should have made some noise when she saw Wu Yin, right? With that in mind, Marissa and Sensei Merwin both stepped forward with doubtful expressions and walked into the shrine. Then, both of their expressions turned awkward. Under the watchful eyes of Marissa and Sensei Marumi, Wu Yin squatted down and half-knelt in front of Ling Ming, who is snoring away in the kotatsu. He took out a small needle and stabbed it into Ling Ming's exposed smooth arm. That's it. He succeeded just like that. Marissa and Sensei Maru looked at each other in dismay. But reality proved that if he wanted to succeed, he still needed to put in some effort. The three of them clearly saw this scene. The small needle pierced into Ling Ming's smooth and slender arm. However, not only was there no blood, there was not even the slightest sound when the needle pierced into her arm. Only Wu Yin could feel that when the needle stabbed into Ling Ming's arm, it was as if he was stabbing air. Even though the needle stabbed into Ling Ming's arm, it didn't cause her any harm. In other words, it was as if Ling Ming's skin was immune to the damage caused by the small needle. In gaming terms, it was similar to a state of being unable to break through her defense. Even though the attack hit, the damage caused was 0. Thus, this needle didn't even cause her to feel pain, let alone see blood. At the very least, Ling Ming was still sleeping soundly with no signs of waking up. So it's like that. Sensei Maru sighed. This kind of action is already equivalent to attacking Ling Ming. There's no way to harm her at all. This is cheating. Marissa was indignant. I hate this ability of Ling Ming's the most. Every time I can't hit her. Even if I hit her, she doesn't feel anything. This is too unfair. Why don't I, Ling Ming's destined opponent, have such a powerful ability? I won't complain about the destined opponent of Ling Ming that you speak of, Wu Yin said as if he was having a headache. Looks like we have to think of another way. Think of what other way? Of course, I'm going to give Princess a good whack. Wu Yin subconsciously replied to the question that came out of nowhere. Then he noticed something. This voice didn't seem to belong to Marissa or Sensei Maru. Before Wu Yin could react, a figure slowly stood up from the ground and looked down at Wu Yin with a handful of imperial coins in his hand. You came to someone's house to disturb their sleep. So it's for a sneak attack. Wu Yin, Marissa, and Sensei Maru froze. Chapter 1825. In other words, standing on top of the kotatsu table in the middle of the shrine, Ling Ming crossed her arms in front of her chest and looked down at Wu Yin, Marissa, and Fumamaru standing side by side in front of the kotatsu. Her expression became increasingly unfriendly. In order to obtain a drop of my blood, you came to the shrine to ambush me? Hearing this, Wu Yin raised his head and looked at Ling Ming, who was standing on top of the kotatsu table. Although he wanted to ridicule her for standing on top of the kotatsu table, he still nodded obediently. That's right. That's all. I was forced to do it, Markumru hurriedly said with a smile. I only did this to retrieve my camera, Ling Ming. Furthermore, my ambush did not succeed. That's right. Marissa placed her hands on her waist. Personally, I am very opposed to doing sneaky things. Rather than sneaking up on Princess Ling Ming, it would be better to do it in broad daylight. Hearing Marissa's words before Ling Ming could respond, Wu Yin spat out, "Come your head. Against doing sneaky things? Don't you always act sneakily when you steal from the black and white bandits?" I didn't steal anything, Marissa retorted with a face full of dissatisfaction. I'm just borrowing it. I will definitely return it in the future. Is that so? Wu Yin looked doubtfully at Marissa. Then when are you going to return it? Is there even a need to ask? Marissa said matter-of-factly. After saying this, of course it's after I die. Wu Yin did not want to continue his ridicule. However, Marissa's idea wasn't incorrect. The most worthless things in Fantasy Village were the monsters, spirits, and spirits that could live for hundreds of years. For these existences that could easily live for hundreds of years, the lifespan of humans was really too short. Perhaps to those monsters, Waiting for Marissa to die before returning the items was actually just a very normal borrowing period of time. That's hard to say, really. Princess Ling Meng sighed. It's not easy to get a good night's sleep. I was still thinking of spending the day leisurely. Who knew that you would ruin my plans because of such a boring matter? Why am I so unlucky? Well, actually, it's easy to solve this problem, Wu Yin suggested kindly. As long as you're willing to give me a drop of blood, I'll leave immediately. That way, you can continue to sleep. Furthermore, it wouldn't be a problem to spend today, tomorrow, or even the day after. How about it? Not bad, right? Princess Ling Ming smiled insincerely. Do you think I'll fall for your trick? Dang, Wu Yin asked doubtfully. What do you mean by that? Do you think this is the first day I've known you? Princess Ling Ming said coldly. What are you planning to do with my blood? There are various reasons. In other words, you don't want my blood to drink right. Princess Ling Ming raised her voice and interrupted Wu Yan's words. If that's the case, I can't give it to you. Forget about Wu Yan. Even Marissa and Fumaru were shocked by Princess Ling Ming's resolute tone. Why? Is there anything else to say? Princess Ling Ming looked at Wu Yan as if she was looking at an enemy. I already know that you're the biggest anomaly in Fantasy Village. You're always causing trouble. Who knows what you're planning to do with my blood this time? Wu Yan was at a loss for words. Wu Yan couldn't refute Princess Ling Ming's words. After all, it didn't matter if it was Wu Yan's intention. Ever since he came to Fantasy Village, he had caused all sorts of trouble. For example, on the first day, Fran caused a ruckus in Scarlet Devil Mansion because she wanted to find Wu Yan, causing Remilia to be in a terrible state. Another example is the 7 deadly sins. Wu Yan didn't just bring trouble to Scarlet Devil Dojo, he also dragged in Yong Yong Pavilion, Earth Spirit Hall, and even Bori Shrine. In the span of 7 days, he brought about all sorts of troubles. Wu Yan did all of this for the sake of completing his demigod path quest. That's why he got himself into so much trouble. But trouble is still trouble. For the lazy and lazy Ling Ming, Wu Yan can be considered an enemy. This time, I really won't cause any trouble. Wu Yan wasn't confident in his words, but he could only brace himself. As long as you give me a drop of blood, just one drop, I've said it before, I won't fall for your tricks. Princess Ling Ming snorted. I won't let you disturb my leisurely life. Seriously, I really want to cure the biggest anomaly in your fantasy village. The more Princess Ling Ming spoke, the angrier she became. She even lifted her head and screamed at the ceiling of the shrine. Violet, you despicable bastard. Hurry up and bring your family's big trouble back. From Ling Ming's unbearable screams, one can tell how much she hates Wu Yan for causing her so much trouble. Princess Ling Ming must have taken into account Wu Yan's identity as the head of the Yagumo family and Violet's identity. Otherwise, with Princess Ling Ming's personality, she might have treated Wu Yan as a real anomaly. It seems that Princess Ling Ming is also having a hard time, Markumaru said with some sympathy. She could have lived a leisurely life every day, but now she has to be on tenterhooks every day, worrying about when trouble will happen in Fantasy Village. Being a Boli shaman isn't a good job. Why isn't it a good job? In this regard, Marissa proposed a different idea. This is the Boli shaman who maintains the peace of Fantasy Village. If possible, I want to do it too. Wu Yan couldn't help but roll his eyes. Marissa was indeed worthy of being called the town security of Fantasy Village like Princess Ling Ming. Although she wasn't a Boli shaman, she was indeed very passionate about solving all kinds of anomalies. To Marissa, Wu Yan didn't know whether it was interesting or a genuine outburst of righteousness. But from this point of view, Marissa, who wasn't the real Boli witch, was very enthusiastic about the work of the Boli witch, while the real Boli, which was someone who complained about being tired every day and didn't have any motivation. It was hard to describe this feeling of dissonance. Can't we discuss this? Wu Yan could only bitterly smile at Princess Ling Ming and extend his hand. As long as you give me a drop of blood, I will give you a bag of gold coins. The red bow on Princess Ling Ming's head trembled slightly like a puppy's ears. Seeing this, Wu Yin felt that there was a chance and immediately increased the bargaining chip. 10 bags of gold coins. Princess Ling Ming's delicate body trembled. Her face was filled with interest, but she immediately became resolute. Although Princess Ling Ming was greedy for money, compared to money, Princess Ling Ming clearly preferred a leisurely life. As the saying goes, life is precious. Love is even more valuable. If it is for freedom, both can be thrown away. To Princess Ling Ming, leisure is definitely as important as freedom, more important than life and love. How should I put it? She is really lazy to the point where it makes people cower in fear. This Princess Ling Ming must be one of the 7 sins of sloth. For this reason, Wu Yin could only be ruthless. 100 bags of gold coins. Princess Ling Ming almost fell from her quilt. Marissa and Soul Cutter Maru were stunned with their mouths wide open. A bag of gold coins would contain more than 20. 100 bags would be at least 2,000 gold coins. With these 2,000 gold coins, not to mention the Bully Shrine, even the Red Devil Hall could undergo a major renovation, which could be considered a lot. 100 bags of gold coins. Princess Ling Ming muttered shakily. Then how many of the most expensive tea leaves can I buy? It doesn't matter how much you buy. Wu Yin struck while the iron was hot. If you feel that it's not enough, I can increase it by 10 times. I will give you 1,000 bags of gold coins. 1,000 bags of gold coins? That would be at least 20,000 gold coins. 1,000 bags of gold coins. 1,000 bags of gold coins. Princess Ling Ming's eyes began to drift. After a while, she seemed to wake up and shook her head violently. Even if it's 1,000 bags of gold coins, don't think of ruining my leisurely life. After shouting such a sentence, Princess Ling Ming ran out of the shrine as if she was escaping. Wu Yin did not expect Princess Ling Ming to be able to resist the temptation. He immediately chased after her. Princess Ling Ming, I will give you 10,000 bags of gold coins. Shut up. At this moment, Princess Ling Ming's voice sounded like a sorrowful cry. Chapter 1826. Not long after, Wu Yin returned to the shrine with an annoyed look on his face. Marissa and Sensei Maru, who were leisurely drinking tea in the shrine, saw this scene and couldn't help but reach out to greet him. Yo, you're back. How was it? Did you catch Soldrine? We didn't catch her. Wu Yan's anger rose when he saw Marissa and Kamikaze Marumi leisurely sipping their tea. Since you two are so free, why don't you come and catch that hateful Akasha with me? If even you can't catch Soldream, then it's even more impossible for us to catch her. Fumaru had a look of anticipation as he held his teacup. Rather than wasting time trying to catch her, why not just wait here? Maybe Soldream will come back. Of course Soldream will come back. Marissa pursed her lips. This is the shrine, Soul Dream's territory. No matter how far she runs, Soul Dream will still come back. Sigh. Wu Yin could only sigh. I've not imagined that the shameless red-white would refuse my gold coins for an even more shameless reason. I've already offered 2 million gold coins, but she didn't stop. Instead, she ran away even faster. 2 million gold? Simura laughed dryly. You sure have a lot of gold. So many gold. Where did you hide them? Marissa came over curiously. Are you hiding them in some secret base? Can you bring me there to take a look? Bring you there to take a look? Wu Yin looked at Marissa with a smile that wasn't a smile. Don't tell me you want to borrow gold coins from me? I have no interest in those shiny gold things. Marissa waved her hand. I am interested in things that are both practical and interesting. Take Patrice's books, for example. They can increase my strength. Some books that can only be read are also very interesting. If you have something interesting and powerful, why don't you lend it to me to play with? I'm sorry. I do have a lot of interesting and powerful things, but I'm definitely not lending them to you. Wu Yin said without hesitation. He sat down cross-legged and revealed a troubled expression. This is going to be troublesome. Are you still thinking about how to obtain a drop of Ling Ming's blood? Sensei Marifumi asked. Why are you so obsessed with Ling Ming's blood? The 7 deadly sins seem to have been created to obtain a drop of blood from the people of the moon. right? In any case, I have a use for it. Wu Yin responded first. Then he was stunned. He looked at the text of the life shooter Maru in surprise. How did you know that I drank the medicine that could trigger the 7 deadly sins in order to obtain a drop of blood from the Forever Pavilion? Don't underestimate the integrity of a professional reporter. In Fantasy Village, there are not many things that I don't know, Takamaru said proudly, but when he touched the empty space in front of him where the camera used to be, he was shocked. He hung his head dejectedly again. Speaking of which, when are you going to return my camera to me? I don't want to return it. Of course, the one who said this wasn't Wu Yin. It was Marissa. It's better to destroy that kind of thing. Marissa, you really are a sinful person. Sensei Marifumi looked at Marissa with an unfriendly expression. The camera is innocent. You actually harmed an innocent child for your own sake. A sinful person like you won't live long. I'd rather live a few years less than have you write such a shameful report. Marissa gnashed her teeth. Otherwise, I'll just destroy the film. The film is innocent too, Sensei Marifumi said resolutely. Marissa, if you want to harm the innocent, you'll have to get through me first. It doesn't matter how many innocent people you hurt. Marissa pressed down on her witch-like hat and shouted. Moreover, I'll deal with them together with you. If you can do it, then come and try. Marissa and Sensei Marifumi glared at each other. Sparks seemed to fly as their gazes collided. You two really have nothing better to do, Wu Yin said unhappily. If you're so free, then hurry up and think of a way. A way? Marissa and Sensei Marifumi looked at Wu Yin at the same time and said in surprise, You still haven't given up? What's so strange about that? Wu Yin raised an eyebrow. Generally speaking, it's strange to give up too early, right? But even 2 million gold coins can't move Soul Dream. What other way do you have to make her give you a drop of blood? Sensei Marifumi spread his hands helplessly. You must know she's Soul Dream. Don't be fooled by her appearance. Once she's stubborn, she'll give people a headache. Not to mention, you're trying to ruin her leisurely life. Who would have the time to ruin that Akane's leisurely life? Wu Yin frowned. It's that guy who thinks I'll cause trouble. In other words, you're really not welcomed by Soul Dream. Marissa looked at Wu Yin with an expression that said she didn't think highly of Wu Yin. From the looks of it, Ling Ming won't compromise no matter what. Even if you try to use force, you won't be able to win against Ling Ming. If that's the case, there's nothing you can do. That's why I came to you two to discuss it, right? Wu Yin waved his hand in annoyance. If you have any good ideas, then hurry up and give them to me. Speaking of which, you should be worried about this kind of thing. Why drag us down with you? Sensei Marifumi complained. I still want to go back and write the report. If that's the case, then you have to give me ideas. Wu Yin grinned. Otherwise, I won't return the camera to you. Without that camera filled with scandalous photos, you won't be able to write the report. You bastard, you're the devil. Sensei Marifumi cried out in grievance. But when he realized that this method didn't work on Wu Yin, he clenched his teeth. If that's the case, then this is the only way. Bori Shrine, in a bush not far away, and then, hiding behind the bush, Wu Yin narrowed his eyes. This is the idea you came up with? Sensei Marifumi, who was lying on the ground beside Wu Yin, snorted. He sounded very pleased with himself. Don't worry. I often do things like this to get news material. Soul Dream is slow. She won't be able to discover us. Who asked you if we'll be discovered? Wu Yin would have shouted at Sensei Marifumi if he didn't have to lower his voice. I'm asking you, if we hide here, will we be able to get Soul Dream's blood? Of course it's impossible to just hide here, Sensei Marifumi said as he observed the situation at the shrine. Since Soul Dream has made up her mind not to give you her blood, it'll be hard to convince her otherwise. So we can only take it by force. Everyone knows that. Marissa, who was lying on the other side of Wu Yin, couldn't help but speak up. But we can't harm Soul Dream at all. That's why Sensei Marifumi smiled meaningfully. It's just that we can't. It's just that we can't? Wu Yin and Marissa flinched. They didn't know what's going on. Soul Dream's invincibility, in the end, is only used to counter the damage and attacks caused by others. Sensei Marifumi explained. If it's not because of the damage and attacks caused by others, Soul Dream's invincibility wouldn't activate. At this point, Marissa was still confused, but Wu Yin had a sudden epiphany. You mean, we have to create some accidents for Soul Dream? That's right. That's right. Sensei Marifumi chuckled. I feel that if it was a broken knee while walking, a brick falling from the sky and smashing your head, or the soles of your feet being pierced by a thumbtack thrown on the ground, these types of attacks were not man-made, but purely accidental. Ling Ming's invincibility would not have been activated. Marissa understood after hearing Sensei Marifumi's words, and her expression became excited. Sensei Marifumi, are you planning to set a trap? That's right. Almost there. Sensei Marifumi looked in the direction of the shrine. As long as Ling Ming returns, the gift I prepared for her in the shrine will come in handy. Hee 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 hee. Marissa had completely forgotten what kind of tragic consequences it would bring to her if the life-shooting pill text were to succeed. She eagerly laughed. That sounds interesting. Not just Marissa, even Wu Yin is looking forward to it. Since they could teach Kobai a lesson and achieve their goal, why not? Chapter 1827. Time passed by second, Pa. Moisa, who was hiding in the bushes not far from the shrine, swung her palm for the umpteenth time, producing a crisp sound. Of course, Marissa's slap wasn't aimed at anyone else but herself. Moreover, it was a very forceful slap on her own cheek, nearly causing it to turn red. Moisa, Markumru said unhappily from his side. Can't you be a bit more honest? If this goes on, Soul Dream will definitely discover us. What can I do? Moisa showed no signs of repentance. Instead, her face was filled with anger. We have been hiding here for 3 whole hours. In these 3 hours, I have fed the mosquitoes at least 50 times. Why do the mosquitoes only look for me and not you? Moisa, perhaps to the mosquitoes, human blood is more delicious. Markumru said half-heartedly. In any case, you just have to bear with it. Otherwise, no matter how slow Soul Dream is, she will definitely discover us. This despicable Soul Dream. Moisa could not help but begin to complain about Soul Dream. Just where did she go? Why isn't she back yet? Paparazzi is right. Black-white. You have too little patience. Wu Yin sighed as he laid between Marissa and Kamikaze Marifumi. In order to complete my mission, I had to wait for 3 hours or something. Compared to swallowing a deceptive medicine, this is much gentler. That's for you, not for me. Marissa muttered resentfully. If this goes on, I'll want to go home. Even someone like you who can't wait to go out and have fun is thinking this way. Kurosaki must have endured until the end, right? Wu Yan's mouth slowly curved up. I think that she will be back soon. Just as he finished speaking, Shoto Kamaru's ears twitched, and he lowered his voice. His face was filled with excitement as he called out. She's here. Hearing the voice of Nerimaru, Wu Yin and Marissa's spirits shook at the same time. Together with Sensei Marumi, they lowered their bodies as much as possible and hid behind the bushes. He turned his gaze toward the shrine in front of him. Under the gazes of Wu Yin, Marissa, and Sensei Marifumi. Up ahead, on the stone steps not far from the shrine, a head with a large red bow stuck out sneakily and stared at the shrine for a while. Then, he tiptoed out and cautiously moved in the direction of the shrine. Needless to say, this person was undoubtedly Ling Ming. It was as if she was worried that there might be a ferocious tiger within the shrine. She was very vigilant as she moved step by step. At the same time, she pricked up her ears, as if she was trying to hear something from behind the closed doors of the shrine. Those guys should have left, right? As she muttered those words, Ling Ming's footsteps became lighter and lighter as she slowly approached the shrine. She passed by the money box that was as important as her life and arrived before the shrine's main door. She then leaned against the door. There's no sound, Ling Ming muttered. They should have left, right? After confirming that there were no strange sounds coming from the shrine, Ling Ming stood up straight and stared at the door in front of her. Those guys could it be that they're lying in ambush inside? Ling Ming did not suspect for too long. After a while, she let out a sigh of relief. But I didn't sense the presence of a living person. They should have left already. Hiding behind the bushes, Wu Yin, Marissa, and Sensei Marumi saw Ling Ming let out a sigh of relief. They couldn't help but reveal a smirk. It should be said that Ling Ming was indeed worthy of being called Ling Ming. She would never maintain her vigilance for more than a minute. This was because Ling Ming would definitely not have the patience to continue doing something as tiring as maintaining her vigilance. Other than Sensei Marumi, no one knew what kind of trap there was inside the shrine. But seeing Ling Ming's relaxed state, it should not be long before they succeed. However, reality proved that Wu Yin and the rest were too naive. Just as Ling Ming was about to push open the door, she suddenly froze. Her eyebrows were tightly knitted together. Seeing this, Wu Yin, Marissa, and Sensei Marumi held their breaths. Marissa spoke up. Could it be that Ling Ming discovered us? That's impossible, Sensei Marumi said firmly. We've concealed our presence perfectly. We're also quite a distance away from Ling Ming. She can't possibly discover us. But that Akami did stop. Wu Yin frowned. Don't tell me they found out what you did in the shrine. That's also impossible, Sensei Marumi said firmly. That's Ling Ming we're talking about. She didn't even notice when you approached her while she was sleeping. My trap is flawless. It's impossible for her to discover it. Then what's going on? Marissa was vexed. Why did Ling Ming stop? No one could answer this question. Wu Yin, Marissa, and Sensei Marumi could only focus on observing Ling Ming's every move in an attempt to discover something. Under the gazes of the three, Ling Ming's frown deepened as she uttered such words. Why does it feel like something isn't right? Hearing this, Wu Yin, Marissa, and Sensei Marumi almost broke out in cold sweat. Only now did the three remember that Ling Ming was indeed lazy to the point of infuriating the heavens. She was also very slow-witted. However, it was this Ling Ming that had a mysterious constitution that others couldn't match. Firstly, Ling Ming was extremely lucky. Her luck was so good that it was off the charts. Although there was no way for Ling Ming to pick up money on the streets or wash clothes until they turn into gold, there were still some lucky occurrences. For example, when she accidentally stepped on air and almost fell into a river, a turtle would float up from the river and form a stepping board. Ling Ming would be able to step on it and not fall into the water. Another example would be when it snowed. There would be a large number of animal traps buried in the snow. Basically, there would only be a path for people to walk through. Ling Ming, who was completely unaware of this, would not even step on a single trap when she walked through it. During the banquet, Princess Ling Ming had casually guessed the numbers of the dice many times. In the end, she had always guessed correctly. When she drank, she would also drink from the bowl of wine that no one had put in as a prank. She was simply extremely lucky. Thinking of Ling Ming's luck, Wu Yin, Marissa, and Sensei Marumi began to worry. They were worried that the traps in the shrine might have been coincidentally avoided by Ling Ming due to certain circumstances. In addition to her extreme luck, Ling Ming's other special trait was her extremely sharp intuition. So many strange occurrences had occurred in the fantasy village. Among them, there were some that were very suspenseful. Even the mastermind behind these occurrences was unknown. However, Ling Ming was able to rely on her intuition and judgment to find the mastermind behind these occurrences every single time. When shopping, she would often rely on her intuition to choose the best item. If she lost something, she would also rely on her intuition to find it. Unfortunately, the lost item would always be there. This kind of luck and intuition was enough to cover Ling Ming's own dullness, allowing her to avoid many unnecessary disasters. From this, it could be seen that this Bori Shrine shaman had broken the rules. The attacks and injuries caused by others were unable to affect the invincible Ling Ming. Furthermore, she could rely on her luck and intuition to avoid unexpected occurrences. This was simply harder to accept than cheating. Wu Yin, Marissa, and Sensei Marumi could only pray that Ling Ming's luck and intuition, which could be said to be invincible in another aspect, would not appear at this time. It was unknown whether the gods had heard the prayers of Wu Yin, Marissa, and Ling Ming herself had doubts about her intuition. Gradually, Ling Ming's expression became impatient. I'm actually afraid of my own shrine. If Marissa were to know, she would definitely laugh to death. After saying this, Ling Ming did not care about anything else and directly pulled open the door in front of her. At this moment, a bucket of water fell from above the door, pouring all the water on Ling Ming's body. Splash! Before Ling Ming could even react, her entire body was splashed with water. Turning pale with fright, she took a step forward. In the end, the floor was unbelievably slippery. Taking a closer look, she saw that there was a layer of lubricant on the floor. Being splashed with water, Ling Ming was unable to see such an obvious trap. She took a step forward and with a slurp sound, she fell forward. On the ground where Ling Ming fell, there was a sharp needle stuck in it. Chapter 1828. The long, sharp needle was stuck in the floor of the shrine in a very artificial manner. It stood upright, and the cold gleam of the needle's tip slid across the ground, leaving no doubt as to how sharp it was. Being splashed with water, Ling Ming could not even open her eyes. She could not see the oiled floor. Naturally, she also could not see the sharp needles protruding from the floor. She cried out in alarm and fell forward. Looking at the way things were going, Ling Ming would definitely hit her head on the sharp needle. Even if it did not pierce through her forehead, it would at least pierce a layer of skin. If that happened, it would definitely cause a bloody incident. Given how thin the needle was, it should only be able to pierce a small hole, causing Ling Ming to bleed a limited amount. But even so, as long as there was blood, it would be enough. Thus, seeing this scene, Wu Yin, Marissa, and Fumru, who were hiding in the grass, revealed looks of excitement. However, in the next instant, something unexpected happened. Everyone, including the person involved, Princess Ling Ming, and Wen Ming Wan, who had created this childish yet effective trap, did not expect it to happen. Dang! They saw the bucket of water that was stuck above the shrine's door, which had been splashing Ling Ming with water, fall to the ground. With the help of the lubricant, the bucket slid to the front of Ling Ming. When a person falls, they would subconsciously extend their hand to support themselves on the ground. It was the same for Ling Ming. Then, Ling Ming subconsciously extended her hand. Her hand pressed down on the bucket of water that was sliding in front of her, causing it to slip. This caused Ling Ming to fly over the sharp needles on the floor and fly out. Yua! Ling Ming could only let out a cry of alarm. In the next second, her entire body smashed into the shrine's wall. Bang! A very heavy muffled sound rang out. Ling Ming's cries of pain traveled out of the shrine and into Wu Yin, Marissa, and Sensei Marafumi's ears. This is possible. Although there was no way to see the situation inside the shrine from the grass not far from the shrine, it was still possible to see the situation at the entrance. Thus, even though Wu Yin, Marissa, and Soulcutter Marumi were unable to see Soul Dream smashing into the wall, they were able to clearly see the scene of Soul Dream flying out and the reason for it. They were instantly stunned. In a way, this could be considered lucky, right? After all, even if he fell into this trap, Wu Yin, Marissa, and Soulcutter Marumi were still unable to make Ling Ming bleed and obtain a single drop of her blood. If that was the case, even if they fell into the trap, what use would it be? In other words, the blood extraction plan had failed. No, he hasn't failed yet. After waiting for 3 whole hours and feeding the mosquitoes over 50 times, Marissa was absolutely unwilling to accept this failure. While shouting, she took out the 8 trigrams furnace from her magus hat. What do you want? Wu Yin said in surprise. Do you want to attack Red White directly? It's useless. Marissa. Fumaru hurriedly shouted. If we attack directly, we won't be able to harm Ling Ming. Who said I want to attack Ling Ming? Marissa pointed the 8 trigrams furnace at the shrine, causing Wu Yin and Fumaru to have a bad premonition. You can't be thinking of he. Marissa's face revealed a fearless smile as a majestic magic emerged from her hands. The 8 trigrams furnace in her hands flashed with a dazzling magic light. Seeing this scene, Wu Yin and Fumero more or less guessed what Marissa was planning to do and were scared out of their wits. "Marissa, stop!" Unfortunately, it was all too late. Love talisman, or spark. Following Marissa's shout and Wu Yin and Fumeru's screams, a dazzling beam of light shot out from the grass. Like a meteor, it streaked across the sky and heavily landed on the Boli shrine. Boom! With a loud explosion, the violent beam of light exploded on the fragile shrine. Dense flames and smoke were stirred up. But the beam of light didn't fly directly towards the shrine. Instead, it fell below the shrine. Boom! Suddenly, the ground beneath the shrine caved in, and the shrine, which had lost its foundation, collapsed without any suspense. A cloud of dust was stirred up, as if his body was smashed to pieces and his bones scattered, and he fell down. Looking at the Boli shrine that turned into a pile of ruins in a short moment, Wu Yin and Fumero were stunned. They didn't react for a long time. Only 2 words lingered in their minds. "It's over." As for the instigator, Marissa, she wiped away the cold sweat on her forehead. Not only did she not have a guilty conscience, but she instead looked as if she had done something amazing. She straightened her body, put her hands on her waist, and laughed out loud. "How is it? Am I witty enough? Even Ling Ming can't guarantee that she won't bleed in such a situation, right?" Witty? From a certain perspective, Marissa's method could indeed be considered witty. This was because if he were to directly attack Soul Dream, the attack or damage would be negated by Soul Dream's invincible state. That was why Sensei Merwin had thought of such a troublesome method to set up a trap to accidentally injure Soul Dream. For example, Ling Ming's invincible mode wouldn't work if she injured her knee while walking, or if a heavy object fell from the sky and smashed her head, or if she stepped on a nail. For Marissa to directly attack the shrine, she must have been inspired by Fumeru's words of a brick falling from the sky and smashing her head. Instead of attacking Ling Ming, she attacked the ground of the shrine, causing the shrine to collapse. This way, Ling Ming's head would be smashed by the falling ceiling, causing her to bleed. That was what Marissa thought. It has to be said that this idea wasn't wrong. But Wu Yin and Fumero knew that no matter how correct this idea was, it couldn't be considered witty. Setting up some small traps would be fine, as the danger is too low. For the person being tricked, it would be too insignificant. Even a demigod might be careless and fall for it. However, who has ever seen a 7th or 8th rank attack a demigod without being discovered by the demigod? Even if the attack wasn't aimed at the demigod rank expert, the demigod rank expert would definitely be able to detect the attack that appeared around him. Marissa's magic cannon was so powerful, not to mention a demigod. Even a Type 7 Divine Warrior would be able to sense it. Would Ling Ming not be able to sense Marissa's attack and defend herself? The answer was naturally no. Rumble. Suddenly, in the collapsed shrine in front of them, the ground in the middle of the pile of debris suddenly shook and exploded, blowing away all the debris in the middle of the collapsed shrine. Amidst the fragments of the shrine that had been blown up into the air, Ling Ming held onto the imperial coin in her hand. Droplets of water still remained on her body, but she was not injured in the slightest, let alone bleeding. Her head was lowered and her expression was indiscernible as she slowly floated up into the air. Wu Yin, Marksman Marumi, as well as the complacent Marissa froze on the spot, like statues, unable to move. Floating in the air, Ling Ming kept her head lowered. No one was able to see the expression on her face. However, the aura surrounding Ling Ming's body was even more valiant than Yanglin's. It was as though a heavy mountain was pressing down on everyone present. Marissa and Sensei Marifumi both revealed terrified expressions. Wu Yan's body stiffened as well, he's screaming inside. Ah! A low laughter like that of a devil, like the announcement of a death sentence, resounded. "You are dead for sure." Without any hesitation, Wu Yin, Marissa, and Sensei Maru all had the same idea. They turned around and prepared to run. But would Ling Ming let them go? The answer was also no. Raising her head, Ling Ming's eyes were filled with murderous intent and anger. She formed a seal with one hand and waved the coin in her other hand. A frightening amount of spirit chi gushed out from her body. Dream seal. In the sky above the Boli shrine, a huge ball of light like the sun appeared without any warning, and like a meteor, it smashed down viciously. Dong! A thunderous sound resounded in the sky above the fantasy village. Chapter 1829. Remilia sat at the head of the round table in the Scarlet Devil Mansion's main hall. She crossed her arms and squinted her eyes. Her gaze was filled with annoyance. Patrice sat beside Remilia. It was rare for her to come out from her library. She sat there with a book in her hands. She lowered her head and read with her usual calm and intellectual expression. Aside from Remilia and Patrice, Zuyi was also present. He stood behind Remilia, but his expression was also filled with helplessness. Taking a closer look, in front of Remilia, Patrice, and Zuyi was Wu Yan. However, at this moment, Wu Yan's image wasn't very good. His clothes were very messy, and there were burn marks on every part of his body. His hair was also messy. Although there were no obvious marks on his face, his expression was very sloppy, as if he was a victim who had just run out of the scene of a fire and had only wiped his face with his hands. To think that you dared to do such a thing. Patrice lowered her head and said without a change in expression, to actually destroy the Bori Shrine. In the entire fantasy village, you guys are probably the only ones who have done such a thing. Soul Dream should be furious, right? Remilia looked at the sloppy Wu Yan with an amused expression. It's hard to tell if she's taking pleasure in Wu Yan's misfortune. Otherwise, you wouldn't have ended up like this. Sirbai, even Zuyi couldn't help but speak out, speechless. This time, you guys went overboard. I'm not fooling around. Wu Yan shrugged as he replied in a weak tone. That was all the fault of that despicable black and white. The paparazzi and I were only implicated. After speaking, Wu Yan recalled what happened in the morning and couldn't help but shiver. In the past, Wu Yan also heard that Soul Dream would transform into various forms due to her emotions. Wu Yan doesn't know if this is true or not, but, however, after witnessing the destruction of the Bori Shrine, Soul Dream didn't transform, but went completely berserk. Even the spirit energy in her body went berserk. In such a state, Soul Dream immediately unleashed her ultimate move. A single dream seal caused Marissa and Sensei Marumi's bodies to emit smoke. Their eyes rolled back as they collapsed to the ground. As for Wu Yan, due to his strength, he was able to teleport and teleport. With the help of the teleportation magic, he was lucky enough to escape the fate of being insta-killed. However, Ling Ming lived up to her reputation of being invincible in Gensikyo. She managed to beat Wu Yan into such a sorry state before he could escape. As a result, Wu Yan ended up in such a sorry state. Wu Yan can't imagine the fate of Marissa and Sensei Marumi, who were taken down by Princess Ling Ming in one move. He only knows that he witnessed Princess Ling Ming's brutality not too long ago. Remilia seemed to have seen her past when she was brutally defeated by Soul Dream in the fantasy village from Wu Yan's expression. The gloating expression on his face turned into one of sympathy. Fortunately, you were only implicated. Otherwise, Soul Dream wouldn't have let you go so easily. Even if she chased you all the way to the Scarlet Devil Mansion, it would be the same. At that time, the Scarlet Devil Mansion would be destroyed. The more Remilia spoke, the more she felt that it was possible. She also shuddered and glared at Wu Yan. I say, of all the people you could provoke, you had to provoke Soul Dream. Even if you were strong, Soul Dream is invincible in the fantasy village. However, Princess Ling Ming is invincible in Fantasy Village. Do you think you could defeat Princess Ling Ming in Fantasy Village? No. As long as it's in the Fantasy Village, even if I use all my trump cards, I won't be able to defeat Soul Dream. Even if I go all out, I'm still no match for that Akagaki. I know my limits, Wu Yan said with a headache. But I don't intend to fight Soul Dream. I only want to obtain a drop of her blood. Why do you want Soul Dream's blood? Patrice lifted her head from the book in her hand and looked at Wu Yan. Last time, for a drop of Soul Dream's blood from the Forever Pavilion, you swallowed a potion that could trigger the 7 sins. This time, for a drop of Soul Dream's blood, you actually destroyed Soul Dream's shrine. Is there a need to go to this extent? Who knew that things would turn out like this? Wu Yin looked like he's at his wit's end. Actually, it's not just Soul Dream and Soul Dream's blood. I still need to collect 3 other types of blood in the fantasy village to gather 5 types of blood essence. 5 types of blood essence. Remilia, Patrice, and Black Knight looked at Wu Yin with a serious expression. Even though it sounded unbelievable, these girls who were closer to Wu Yin than anyone else didn't understand Wu Yin. Whether it's Remilia, who is his younger sister, Sakuya, who is his confidant, or Patrice, who is already in a relationship with Wu Yin, their understanding of Wu Yin is at a very limited level. Wu Yin seemed to have a close relationship with House Yakumo. He was also the ancestor of the vampires who had disappeared for a long time. Under unknown circumstances, he shared a life with Fran. It was only recently that he entered the sights of the demons and humans in the fantasy village. Remilia, Patrice, and Black Knight only had this level of understanding of Wu Yan's identity. Apart from Black Knight, who knew Wu Yan's real name, they knew nothing else. Remilia, Patchouli, and Sakuya perked up when Wu Yin mentioned that he has a goal to accomplish in Fantasy Country. It'll be a little troublesome to explain. I'll explain it simply. Wu Yin deliberated over his next words and said to the 3 girls, I'll tell you everything else later. First, I'll tell you my purpose. I need 5 types of blood that contain unique powers. They are the blood essence that contains the power of imagination, blood essence that contains the power of realm, blood essence that contains the power of eternity, blood essence that contains the power of nature, and blood essence that contains the power of time. These 5 essences can help me complete an item. That item can increase my power by leaps and bounds, to a level where no one can match me. Wu Yin said in a serious tone. Therefore, I must obtain these 5 types of blood essence. Greatly increase your strength. Remilia frowned. So that's why you've stirred up so much trouble. Fantasy, realm, eternity, nature, time, 5 types of blood essence with unique powers. Patrice pondered. In other words, the blood essence of Bori and the moon people of Forever Pavilion contains one of the 5 unique powers. Time. By the side, Lee hesitated for a moment and asked with uncertainty. Lord Bai, that blood essence that contains the power of time, just as you thought. Wu Yin scratched his cheek. It's your blood, Black Knight. Hearing this, Zui Ye's expression didn't change, and he only nodded. Lord Bai, do you need me to give you a drop of blood? No need. Wu Yin said awkwardly. Even though it's a little embarrassing, Black Knight, I already took a drop of your blood during your battle with Remilia. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Don't say that. Black Knight's expression revealed an indescribable gentleness. It's good that I can help Lord Bai. Wu Yin and Sakuya looked at each other, and then, as if attracted to each other, they didn't look away. Ahem! Remilia purposely coughed when she saw this. Her voice sounded a bit dissatisfied. It woke Wu Yin and Kui up. The 2 immediately averted their gazes in an embarrassed manner. Patrice merely swept an indifferent glance and spoke with an emotionless face. In that case, you've already obtained 2 types of blood that you need. Is which bully your next target? You're really unlucky. Remilia pursed her lips. Of all the people, it just had to be that Soul Dream. It's because of this that I have a headache. Wu Yin bitterly laughed. I can't beat her in a fight, and even if I can, I won't be able to injure her. If I were to set a trap, it would be very suspenseful due to the other party's extraordinary luck and intuition. On top of that, I don't even know if I can succeed in setting a trap. Hearing this, Remilia rolled her eyes and suddenly laughed. If you only want Soul Dream's blood, I have a way. Wu Yin's eyes lit up. Chapter 1830. It was nighttime. Standing at the end of the stone steps, Ling Ming stared straight ahead at the ruins of the Boli Shrine. The more she looked at it, the angrier she felt. Even for someone like Ling Ming, who always acted as if it had nothing to do with her. She would only be serious when dealing with the anomaly. Even someone as undisciplined as her could not ignore the fact that her home had been razed to the ground. Furthermore, it was razed to the ground for no apparent reason. For Ling Ming, this was a disaster. I shouldn't have let that despicable person escape so easily. Ling Ming clenched her fists. The anger in her eyes had not dissipated for an entire day. However, she wanted to cry, but had no tears. Could it be that my good days were destined to end when I encountered that big trouble? Right now, Ling Ming was certain that Yakumo Haku, the person who appeared in Fantasy Village for no apparent reason, was definitely a huge problem. At least, for Ling Ming, it was definitely a problem. No matter how Wu Yin evaded the responsibility, or how unintentional he was, or even if he was not the one who destroyed the shrine, Wu Yin could not keep himself out of this matter. After all, if Wu Yin did not force Marissa and Fumaru to help him think of a way to obtain Ling Ming's blood, things would not have turned out this way. Thus, after hearing everything from Marissa and Fumaru, Ling Ming was furious. The anger in Princess Ling Ming's heart was increasing with every passing second. Sooner or later, I'm going to cure that big trouble. After making this grand wish that she did not know if it could be realized, Soul Dream held the imperial coin in her hand and pointed to the side of the ruined Bori shrine, shouting loudly, "Over there, don't slack off. Hurry up and get back to work." Yes, just as Ling Ming's voice fell, two feeble voices responded from the side of the ruined Boli shrine. These two voices were natural. They were Marissa and Fumaru, who were defeated by Ling Ming's dream seal. He saw Marissa and Sensei Marumi, who still had some charred marks on their bodies, were huddled next to the ruins of the Bori shrine. They were sweating profusely as they moved several huge trees with their bare hands. In addition, there were also stone strips and finished lumber. The Bori shrine was a vital existence in Fantasy Village, although it was due to the fact that he often had many demons as guests. In fact, there weren't many humans who came to visit the Bori shrine. As a result, the Boli shrine was also very poor. However, no one ever thought of abandoning such an old shrine. Let's not talk about the fact that the manager of the Fantasy Village is actually the sorceress of the Bori shrine. He needed to solve all kinds of changes and disasters in the Fantasy Village. Aside from the importance of the Bori shaman, the existence of the Bori shrine was also very important. It couldn't be helped. No matter how unpopular it was with humans, how poor it was, and how old it was, the Bori shrine was the border between the outside world and the fantasy land. In the real world outside, there was also a Bori shrine that looked like a ruin. If there were no accidents, the people or things that got lost in the fantasy land would enter the fantasy land through the Bori shrine in the outside world. Therefore, the Bori shrine would sometimes have many things from the outside world appear out of thin air. Most of the people who got lost in the fantasy land from the outside world would also appear near the Bori shrine. Of course, the people who got lost in the fantasy land due to a certain demon sage were an exception. From this, it could be seen how important the Bori shrine was. Ling Ming was even a little worried. Strictly speaking, the Bori shrine in the fantasy land and the Bori shrine in the outside world were actually the same. They were like two sides of a mirror. If the Bori shrine in the fantasy land was destroyed, then would the Bori shrine in the outside world be affected? For example, the Bori shrine in the outside world had also collapsed, causing the only border between the outside world and the fantasy land to disappear. Things from the outside world would no longer be able to enter the fantasy land. This was still considered light. If it was serious, it might even affect the Bori Great Barrier. That was not certain. Therefore, the reconstruction of the Bori shrine was a must. Obviously, in order to make up for their mistakes, the reconstruction work would be done by Marissa and Fumaru, who caused the collapse of the Bori shrine. Even if Fumaru was only implicated by the unfortunate black and white. Fortunately, since the collapse of the Bori shrine until now, the Bori Great Barrier did not have any obvious problems. At most, the connection with the outside world was broken. Let's not worry about the barrier for now. In any case, even if there is a problem, the spirit-branded retainer in the Yukari family should be able to maintain it. Yukari won't let the barrier have any problems. Ling Meng sighed. I should rebuild the Bori shrine first. Saying so, Ling Meng was like a foreman in a construction site. Or rather, she was like a domineering landowner. She held the imperial coin in her hand and commanded Marissa and Fumaru. Hurry up. We need to at least prepare the tools and materials needed to rebuild the shrine by today. Yes. Marissa and Sensei Maru still responded weakly. They moved the wood and stone, piled them aside, and then went into a small forest not far from Bori Shrine. They continued to cut down trees, blast rocks, and turn them into wood and stone. Marissa's firepower was originally very strong. Fumaru's speed was not only fast. Both of them were very strong. When it came to making wood and stones, their speed was not something an ordinary person could compare to. One of them was comparable to a dozen people. Looking at this progress, it should not be a problem to prepare all the materials needed to rebuild the shrine by today. However, the work of rebuilding the shrine could only continue tomorrow. In other words, Ling Meng did not have a place to stay tonight. Thinking of this, Ling Meng's head started to hurt. I can only sleep in Marissa's house for the night. Marissa, who had just carried a piece of wood back, just happened to hear these words and unwillingly called out, Why my house? Do you have a problem with that? Ling Meng revealed a fierce expression as she looked at Marissa. Who do you think caused me to fall to the point where I don't even have a place to stay? Marissa shrunk her neck and was speechless. At this moment, the sound of footsteps on the stone steps of the shrine entered the ears of Ling Meng, Marissa, and Fumaru, attracting the attention of the three girls. Turning their heads, they looked in the direction of the stone steps. In the next moment, several figures appeared before their eyes. It was a group of one small figure and two large figures. The smaller figure was no more than a meter tall and looked like a child of about 10 years old. She wore a white cherry-colored gothic lowly outfit and a hat on her head. She walked in front of the two larger figures. Of the two large figures, one was dressed in pajamas with a book in her hand. She looked very intellectual as she walked. The other was dressed in maid attire and exuded an awe-inspiring aura. She held a parasol in her hand and supported the small girl in the dark. There was only one place in the fantasy village where such a group of three would appear. Scarlet Devil Mansion. The newcomers were Remilia, Patrice, and Zuyi. Oh! The moment Remilia ascended the stone steps, she saw Ling Meng, Marissa, and Fumi looking at her in astonishment. She also saw the ruins of the Boli Shrine, and a sinister smile appeared on her face. You guys seem to be very busy. It's you guys? Marissa and Sensei Maruin exclaimed in surprise. What are you guys doing here? Princess Ling Meng looked at Remilia with some displeasure, her expression turning somewhat unfriendly. Don't tell me you guys are here to apologize for your housekeeper? Apologize? Remilia shrugged. It's not a castle, it's just a shrine. What's there to apologize for? Ling Meng was enraged. Your housekeeper destroyed my shrine, and you're looking down on him? There's nothing wrong with that, right? Remilia smirked, revealing her sharp canine teeth. I'm giving you a chance to rebuild your shrine. To be honest, the Bori shrine is too old. Isn't it good to build a new one? Whether it's old or new, it's none of your business. Ling Meng snorted and waved her hand at Remilia in disdain. If there's nothing else, hurry up and leave. Don't be a hindrance. Isn't there nothing else? Patrice suddenly spoke. Remilia is here to invite you to the hot springs. Chapter 1831. Hot spring. This used to be an impossible word in Fantasy Village. That was because there was no such thing as a hot spring in Fantasy Village. Not long ago, there was a strange phenomenon caused by demons in the subterranean world. Due to various coincidences, a hot spring was born on Demon Mountain. Since then, hot spring had truly entered the sights of the people and monsters in the Fantasy Village. It had also begun to be mentioned by people and monsters. Up until now, Ling Meng did not know if there were other hot springs in the Fantasy Village. However, for Ling Meng, who had not soaked in a hot spring not long ago and had not soaked in a hot spring ever since she resolved the mutation, the term hot spring was somewhat fresh to her. When she heard Patrice say that Remilia invited her to soak in the hot spring, Soul Dream didn't know how to react. On the other hand, Marissa and Sensei Merwin's eyes lit up, revealing expressions of reminiscence. Hot spring? Ever since the last mutation was resolved, he hadn't soaked in it again, right? That hot spring in Demon Mountain, right? There was a time when I used that hot spring as the main topic of my report. Looks like you're all interested. Remilia smiled proudly as she looked at Ling Ming. How about it? Do you want to come along? Why do you suddenly want to soak in the hot spring? Princess Ling Ming looked at Remilia with a doubtful expression. Also, why would you invite me to soak in the hot spring? Remilia had always been a person who did things her own way. Otherwise, she wouldn't have used the red mist to cover the entire sky of Fantasyland to block the sunlight, just to be able to move around during the day. That time, it was Ling Ming who had taken action and knocked Remilia out. Only then was the red mist mutation resolved. Since then, Remilia would occasionally visit the Bori Shrine. She even used the Bori Shrine as a venue to hold banquets, causing Soul Dream a lot of trouble. However, Remilia would invite Soul Dream to a place to play. This was the first time. Remilia's reply was unusually willful and casual. Nothing much. I just suddenly wanted to invite you to soak in the hot spring. Hearing this, Princess Ling Ming subconsciously felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't pinpoint what exactly was wrong. It had to be said that Ling Ming's intuition was accurate. It was so accurate that it made one's heart palpitate. Patrice seemed to have noticed that Ling Ming was using her intuition. She shot a glance at Ling Ming and said, I've destroyed your shrine for nothing. Remy would like to invite you to the hot springs as an apology. Huh? Hearing Patrice's words, even Remilia was stunned. Even Raven Knight had a look of surprise on his face as he revealed an expression of astonishment. Apologize? Marissa nodded in relief. In the end, it's still an apology. That's not. Remilia wanted to explain, but she was interrupted by Patrice before she could finish her sentence. Remy is just embarrassed. Don't mind her. After speaking, Patrice shot a glance at Remilia, causing Remilia to recall something. Remilia opened her mouth slightly and unwillingly turned her head away, no longer denying it. Still feeling that something was amiss, Ling Ming narrowed her eyes as though she wanted to see through Remilia's thoughts. That's not right. Right at this moment, Sensei Maru said to Remilia in surprise, Aren't you a vampire? I thought you couldn't touch water? With Sensei Maru's reminder, Ling Ming and Marissa recalled something. As a vampire, Remilia's bloodline wasn't very high. Even though she had the power that most vampires with higher bloodlines didn't have, she still had the weakness of vampires. She wasn't afraid of crosses or holy light, but Remilia unexpectedly had weaknesses like sunlight and water that could only counter low-level vampires. If Remilia were to soak in the hot springs, she would probably melt in the water. Do you think I would be so stupid as to joke around with my life for a hot spring? Remilia crossed her arms. This time, a sincere smile appeared on her face. Don't worry, I can already touch water. Ling Ming, Marissa, and Sensei Maru were stunned. You can touch water? Isn't water your weakness? You've already suppressed your weakness. Well, Remilia didn't explain and waved her hand. You can say that. Seeing that Remilia didn't seem to have any intention of explaining, Ling Ming turned her gaze to Kuai. Actually, I can't say that young Miss has suppressed her weakness. Kuai hesitated for a moment before deciding not to hide it. It's just that Lord Bai has a tool that allows young Miss to touch water for a short period of time. That's right. The reason Remilia could touch water wasn't because she overcame her weakness. It was because Wu Yin had exchanged for a tool that targeted this weakness and gave it to Remilia. Wu Yin originally wanted to exchange for a tool that could eliminate Remilia's weakness like sunlight and water. However, after thinking about it, he gave up on that idea. With his relationship with Remilia, Remilia would definitely become his summon in the future. Once she becomes Wu Yan's summon, she would be cleansed by the system, just like Flan, and get rid of all her weaknesses. Rather than spending points to exchange for an expensive tool, It would be better to wait for the system to eliminate Remilia's weaknesses when he summons her in the future. Thus, William didn't spend that many points to exchange for a tool. He simply exchanged for a cheap tool that could temporarily overcome her weakness and gave it to Remilia. Is it that guy again? Hearing the name she didn't want to hear the most from Zhu Ye's mouth, Ling Meng's expression darkened. Nothing that has anything to do with that guy is good. If you want to go to the hot spring, go ahead. Oh, Remilia didn't seem surprised at all. She had already guessed that Ling Meng would say that. Ling Meng, I didn't expect you to be so afraid of my housekeeper. Who's afraid of him? Ling Meng's eyebrows shot up. Why would I be afraid of him? Then why did you reject my invitation the moment you heard his name? Remilia smiled provocatively. Doesn't this prove that you're actually very afraid of him? I'm just afraid that he'll cause me trouble. Ling Meng shouted. If I wasn't afraid of him causing me trouble, I wouldn't be afraid no matter how many of them come. So I didn't bring him with me. Remilia shrugged her shoulders. If that's the case, if you're still afraid, then I really have no choice but to follow Pataki and Zhu Yi to the hot spring. Since we've reached this point, Ling Meng tightened her grip on the coin and closed her eyes. She couldn't help but laugh. All right, let's go to the hot spring then. Remilia revealed a victorious smile. Pataki and Zhu Yi secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Sensei Maru exclaimed in surprise. You two really want to go to the hot spring? I want to go too, Marissa shouted loudly. As she shouted, she pounced towards Ling Meng. I want to go to the hot spring too. However, before the Marissa could reach her, Ling Meng extended her hand and pressed it against the Marissa's head. She pushed the dancing Marissa away, keeping her at a distance from Ling Meng. You can't go. Why? With her head held down by Ling Meng, Marissa, who was unable to pounce on Ling Meng, could not help but dance about anxiously. Why won't you let me go? It's not just you. Ling Meng glanced at Sensei Maru, who was restless. You too, Marissa? You can't go either. Sensei Maru's body stiffened, and he couldn't move. Why? Marissa started to argue. Why won't you let us go? Why? You're still asking why. Ling Meng said angrily. You destroyed my shrine, and you still want to go to the hot spring? Continue to work here. Can't you do it tomorrow? Sensei Maru smiled apologetically. How about you let us go today? Don't even think about it. Ling Meng warned. If I find out that you're following me, I don't mind letting you taste the taste of being roasted again. Marissa and Norma Bunla shrugged their shoulders and hung their heads dejectedly. Chapter 1832. In a fantasy land, generally, whether it was humans or monsters, they would use a very simple word like mountain to call the monster mountain. That was to say, if someone mentioned a mountain, then most of them were referring to the monster mountain. On the monster mountain, there were many ancient monsters and gods. A cultural society that was different from other humans and monsters was also established here. In the monster mountain, in addition to those gods that are rarely seen on weekdays, the monsters that are active here are mainly Tengu and Kappa. Tengu and Kappa had high-tech, means that were comparable to the outside world. This was a special society that was formed a long, long time ago, based on the society established by the ghosts and gods that led the Tengu. Therefore, since a long time ago, many monsters had lived in the Monster Mountain. The monsters that lived here had a longer history than the humans in the fantasy land. It was precisely because the monsters in the Monster Mountain were different from the monsters at the foot of the mountain. They lived a corrupt society and served as an important balance point in the fantasy land. In particular, Tengu and Kappa possessed technology that was comparable to or even more advanced than the outside world, which was why no monsters could invade this mountain. Among them, the Tengu was mainly famous for its photography, printing, publishing, and other technologies. The Kappa had the technology of smelting steel, construction, and making props. It could be considered an extremely special existence in the fantasy land, but it did not seem out of place. Moreover, the monsters in the Monster Mountain were more cheerful and united than any other race in the fantasy land. With advanced technology, they lived a rich near-future life. However, because of their strong sense of companionship, They were also quite repulsive to others, especially the intruders in the mountain. No matter who the other party was, they would do their best to drive them away. Therefore, there were many mysteries in the Monster Mountain that had not been confirmed by the monsters and people in the fantasy land. For example, there was a rumor that inside the Monster Mountain, it was an incomparably huge hole. The monsters in the Monster Mountain secretly lived in this hole, living the same life as the outside world. For example, there was a rumor that in the Monster Mountain, there was a technology. It only needed the light energy of the sun for a day. It could automatically produce the necessities of modern life. The monsters in the Monster Mountain only needed to drink wine and read newspapers. Chatting was enough. There was no need for any labor. There was even a rumor that there was a barrier cave in the Demon Mountain that was supposed to be forbidden from connecting to the real world, the fantasy town's Great Bali Barrier. The monsters in Monster Mountain used this cave to disguise themselves as humans. They obtained modern technology in the real world and interacted with humans in the real world. Therefore, they did not have to interact with other monsters and humans in Fantasy Village. Of course, these were all just rumors. Whether or not such a thing was true, even Ling Meng, the manager of Fantasy Village, did not know. Most of them were just nonsense. After all, the monsters came to live in the Fantasy Village because they had no place to stay in the real world. Basically, it was impossible for them to have any contact with the real world. If the Boli Great Barrier really opened a hole that could lead to the outside world, Violet would not turn a blind eye to it. She would definitely do something. At the very least, she would not allow the monsters in the Monster Mountain to casually use the hole to enter and exit the outside world in Fantasy Village, so as not to expose the existence of Fantasy Village. As for the empty rumor in Monster Mountain, only Tengu and Kappa knew whether it was true or not. When it was almost midnight, in a certain corner of Monster Mountain, several figures visited a hot spring that was emitting steam. The newcomers were naturally Remilia, Patrice, Zuiyi, and Ling Ming. The monsters in Monster Mountain were very xenophobic. Usually, there were guards formed by monsters patrolling the mountain, even at night. Once they found an intruder, they would eliminate them. Even if the monsters in Fantasy Village came to Monster Mountain for some reason, they had to be interrogated by the guards. If only Remilia, Patrice, and Zuiyi came to Monster Mountain, they would definitely be interrogated like this. However, it was different with Ling Ming around. Who didn't know the shaman of Boli Shrine? She was the manager of Fantasy Village, and Monster Mountain was also under her jurisdiction. Although Boli Shrine wouldn't interfere with Monster Mountain's matters, it didn't mean that they could exclude her unless they didn't want to stay in Fantasy Village. Therefore, as soon as they confirmed that Shaman Boli was among the newcomers, the guards tacitly retreated and continued their patrol. Ling Ming, your face is quite useful, Remilia said helplessly. If only we came, there would definitely be a dispute. That's why I said that you guys are a bunch of troublemakers, Ling Ming said with an expressionless face. She then extended her hand and slowly unbuttoned her clothes. Stop talking nonsense. Quickly soak in the water and go back to sleep. Remilia, Patrice, and Zuiyi could hear the annoyance and impatience in Ling Ming's words. This annoyance and impatience wasn't directed at Remilia and the others, but Ling Ming was still angry at the culprits who destroyed her shrine. Remilia didn't beat around the bush. She took out a bottle, poured out a pill, and swallowed it. This piqued Ling Ming's curiosity. Then what kind of item can allow you to touch water temporarily? It's said to be. Remilia frowned as she weighed the bottle in her hand. I just don't know if it's effective. Since Lord Bai said so, it must be true, Zuiyi hurriedly said. Lord Bai wouldn't joke around with young Miss Safety. That's true. Patrice looked at Remilia. Remilia, for the sake of caution, you should try it first and see if it's effective. I got it. Remilia started to feel nervous at this point. After living for 500 years, Remilia had never touched a source of water other than drinking it. No, it should be said that she didn't touch large amounts of water. A small amount of water naturally wouldn't affect Remilia. However, if she came into contact with large amounts of water, she would be affected. If Remilia were to touch the hot spring in front of her, she would probably feel pain. But if she were to soak herself in, she would probably melt right away. Thus, Remilia couldn't be blamed for being nervous. Remilia could only put on a brave front and pretend that she didn't care. She walked forward, squatted down, and looked at the steaming hot spring water in front of her with some struggle. Ling Ming had already stopped removing the clothes, while Patrice had also kept her book. A trace of nervousness appeared on Sanye's face. The three of them simultaneously looked towards Remilia, who was squatting by the hot spring, with different expressions. While Ling Ming said that she didn't want to have anything to do with Wu Yin, she was curious as to whether Remilia could really touch water with the item he gave her. Patrice was also curious, but at the same time, she was also concerned for Remilia. Only Zui didn't have any curiosity or concern, only worry and nervousness. Under the gazes of the three, Remilia couldn't help but swallow her saliva. She nervously extended her hand and paused on the surface of the hot spring for a moment. Then, she shut her eyes and threw caution to the wind as she stretched her hand in. Ling Ming, Patrice, and Zui immediately took a step forward and shifted their gazes to Remilia's hand. Ugh! Remilia let out a sound. Hearing this sound, Ling Ming, Patrice, and Zui understood. Remilia could really touch water now, because this sound didn't contain any pain, only satisfaction. So comfortable. Remilia opened her eyes. Her scarlet eyes were filled with joy. Also, it's so warm, young miss. Zui carefully asked, "Is there anything strange about it?" "Don't worry, I don't feel anything strange. That medicine should be able to let me touch water." Remilia happily waved her hand in the water. "I am clear about my body, you can rest assured. Later, let me study that medicine." Patrice nodded. "Perhaps you can find a way to overcome your weakness." And Remilia gladly agreed. "Since there's no problem, hurry up and get down." Ling Ming's tone was impatient as she continued undressing. "I still have to find a place to stay later." Remilia and the other two exchanged glances and also started undressing. Chapter 1833. Soaking in a hot spring in the middle of the night wasn't a rare occurrence. However, soaking in a hot spring in the middle of the night in a desolate place with no other source of light apart from the moonlight and starlight in the sky was an extremely rare occurrence. At this very moment, Ling Ming, Remilia, Patrice, and Sanyi each occupied a different location and soaked in the hot spring of the Demon Mountain. Only those with good eyesight and careful observation would be able to discover the situation in the hot spring. Ling Ming was alone in a corner of the hot spring. Not far from her side was Remilia, and Sanyi was beside Remilia. Opposite Remilia and Ziyi, on the other side of Ling Ming, was Patrice. She was clearly here to soak in the hot spring, but for some reason, she had brought a book with her. She was doing her own thing, soaking in the hot spring while reading her book with an expressionless face. In this manner, Ling Ming, Remilia, Patrice, and Sanyi sat in the hot spring and leaned against the rock wall. Basically, everything below their shoulders was submerged in the water. Remilia, who was originally happy to be able to touch the water, was hesitant to share a bath with Remilia. Due to various reasons, Ling Ming was unhappy. But at this moment, all of them cast their gazes in the same direction and remained silent. The three of them cast their gazes in the direction of Patrice. No, more accurately speaking, it should be Patrice's half-exposed chest that was submerged in the water. Because they were in the hot spring, it was needless to say that everyone was completely naked. If one were to observe carefully. No, there was no need to observe carefully. As long as one's vision didn't have a problem, they would be able to clearly see the differences in the figures of the various young ladies that were originally not very good-looking due to the existence of the clothes. First, it was Remilia. As for Remilia, one could only say that. Her figure was that of a proper young lady. She looked like she was only 10 years old. Her body hadn't fully matured and couldn't even be said to have grown a little. However, Remilia's figure was very slender. It was surprisingly watery, as if it was made of glass. Although it wasn't transparent, It was like a solidified white jelly. It gave people the feeling that if they pressed their fingers on it, they would be bounced back by the skin. It couldn't be said to be tempting, but it was quite easy to make people gasp in amazement. On the other hand, although Ling Meng's figure was more outstanding than Remilia's, she did not have the same feeling as Remilia. Instead, she appeared more refreshing and smooth. Even though she was soaked in water and surrounded by white steam, Ling Meng's fair skin could still be seen. If Remilia were to be compared to jelly, then Ling Meng would be a brightly colored candy. One could not help but lick her. Of course, Princess Ling Meng's figure could not be described as good. Her curves were very distinct, but it was still too early to say that she was impressive. She could only be described as cute. Then it was Night. In terms of the size of the part that needed to be protruded, Night was the same as Ling Meng. They were the type that could only be grasped with one hand. They couldn't be considered voluptuous or impressive. However, Ji had a delicate body that reminded people of ice, snow, and rivers. It was an extremely beautiful body. Her chest wasn't large, but the shape was beautiful. Her skin wasn't as smooth as Ling Meng's, but it was far more exquisite. It wasn't as watery as Remilia's, but it was soft and tender like a blooming cherry blossom. It gave people an indescribable sense of beauty. The water from the hot spring dripped down from her cherry blossom-like skin. It was a beautiful sight that could take one's breath away. It was very alluring. Remilia, Ling Meng, and Night. Out of the three of them, Night's figure should be the most suitable and the most attractive. However, compared to Patrice, it was still child's play. At first glance, the feeling that Patrice gave people could only be described with one word: soft and velvety. Just by looking at it with the naked eye, one would feel that it was extremely soft. If one was lucky enough to hug Patrice, they would definitely feel as though they had thrown themselves into a bed. It would be extremely comfortable and blissful. Compared to this softness, Patrice's most prominent part was still the most eye-catching part. Even if the water flowed past, it wouldn't be able to find a gap to squeeze in. It was a pair of voluptuous breasts that were tightly pressed against each other. In addition to her soft and firm waist, slender thighs, and fully developed figure, this was undoubtedly the dream of all men. It was the most perfect figure in the world. It was the embodiment of both men's desires and women's longing. It could be said that it was a figure that was doted on by the Creator. Needless to say, what caused Remilia, Ling Meng, and Raven Knight to ignore all their emotions and stare at the pair of perfectly round chests that could not be concealed. Of course, compared to Patrice's voluptuous figure, Remilia, Ling Meng, and Knight looked like a child of about 10 years old, while the other two were only 16 or 17 years old. They still had a lot of room for growth. However, Remilia was a vampire. She wouldn't age or die, and her body wouldn't grow any further. Ling Meng and Knight had also reached the final stage of their development. Not long after, their figures would be fixed unless they were developed by their destined other halves. Even so, with Ling Meng and Knight's current state, if they were to allow their bodies to grow freely, they would definitely not be able to reach Patrice's level. Furthermore, Patrice gave off a feeling of being too weak to stand up to a gust of wind. She also had an intelligent and steady appearance. Even if their bodies were to grow to Patrice's level, Ling Meng and Knight didn't have the confidence to compete with Patrice in terms of attractiveness to men. Thus, Remilia, Ling Meng, and Knight gazed at the enviable semicircle floating on the water surface. Their eyes were filled with unwillingness. Patrice, to think that I've always treated you as a good friend. I didn't expect you to betray me so early on. I'm displeased that my shrine was destroyed, and I'm also displeased that I didn't get rid of that super troublemaker. I'm displeased with Marissa, and I'm displeased with Wen as well. But I'm most displeased with this moment, right? Lady Patrice, to think that you could hide so deeply. Patrice tilted her head and asked in bewilderment. She could faintly hear a few muttering voices. What's wrong? Facing Patrice's question, Remilia, Ling Meng, and Zuiyi responded with cold snorts, leaving Patrice somewhat stunned. Did I offend them? Ling Meng. As though trying to shake off her displeasure, Remilia turned to Ling Ming and spoke with a rather harsh tone. How about we compete and see who can soak in the hot spring the longest? Ling Ming frowned and waved her hand disinterestedly. How troublesome. You should look for your maid to compete with that big-breasted witch over there. Don't say that. There's a prize. Remilia revealed an unfathomable smile. If you can soak in the hot spring longer than me, after you rebuild the shrine, I'll pay for all the furniture and utensils. Hearing this, Ling Ming's uninterested and lazy expression disappeared without a trace, and her eyes shone with a bright light. Are you serious? Of course it's true. Remilia shrugged. It's just some furniture and utensils. It won't cost much. It's not just furniture and utensils, Ling Ming reminded. I also want to buy a bigger and better kotatsu than the one I had before. No problem. And the best tea set. That's not a problem either. I also want to buy tea leaves. I'll buy you the best. So annoying. When the time comes, you could buy whatever you want. All right. Ling Ming finally mustered up her enthusiasm. No, that's not right. Rather than calling it enthusiasm, it would be more accurate to call it throwing caution to the wind and going all out. For the furniture of my new shrine, I won't leave before you even if I die. Even though they already expected this reaction from Ling Ming, Remilia, Patrice, and Knight couldn't help but feel a sense of helplessness when they heard this. This poor witch, could it be that the mysterious power in her blood is a power that can make people lose all their strength? That's truly frightening. Chapter 1834. Generally speaking, hot springs aren't suitable for prolonged soaking. Otherwise, one would suffer from chest tightness, thirst, dizziness, and other symptoms. Perhaps due to the lack of moisture, the skin would be dry. Therefore, it's generally unsuitable to soak in a hot spring for more than 20 minutes. Otherwise, there would be all sorts of side effects. Large amounts of moisture would be drained from the skin and cause discomfort. Originally, Ling Ming intended to soak in the hot spring for 10 minutes and return to her shrine to worry about it. However, after Remilia proposed the bet, Ling Ming decided to stake it all. As time elapsed, Ling Ming, Remilia, Patrice, and Sanyi had entered the hot spring for 30 minutes. Roughly 40 minutes had passed since then. I can't take it anymore. Patrice's body was originally weaker than an average person. Although she wasn't a human, but a witch, her resistance to the hot spring was much stronger than an average person. However, after 40 minutes, her calm face turned red and she surrendered. Lady Patrice. Seeing Patrice acting as though she was drunk, her head swaying left and right. She looked as though she was about to fall into the hot spring and faint. Zuyez's face turned red as well. He rushed over and helped Patrice up. Lady Patrice, are you all right? Zuyi. Patrice mumbled in a daze. I feel dizzy. This. Zuyi turned his gaze to Remilia, his expression somewhat awkward. Young Mississippi. Zuyi. Her face was also red. However, Remilia, who was still at ease, waved her hand at Zhao Yi. Help Patrice to the shore to rest. But Zuyi hesitated. Young miss, don't you need me to accompany you? Don't worry, I'm fine, Remilia said with a dull expression. You can wait on the shore with Patrice. Rao Yi glanced at Remilia, who appeared to be at ease, and then at Patrice, who was fainting. He could only nod his head in agreement. I understand, young Mississippi. Leaving these words, Jeannie helped Patrice out of the hot spring and walked towards the shore. Patchouli and Nagai left the hot spring. They returned to the shore. Only then did Remilia tilt her head and look to her side. There, Ling Ming was soaking everything below her shoulders in the hot spring, her eyes wide open. It was as if he had pulled an all-nighter and hadn't slept at all. They were still in a stalemate and refused to sleep. Like a person who was holding a toothpick against his eyelids, he held on desperately. Taking a closer look, Ling Ming's face was redder than a monkey's, but her pair of large, watery eyes that used to be filled with laziness were no longer filled with laziness. Only dullness remained, and she even drew circles in her eyes. A sly smile appeared on Remilia's blushing face. How is it? Are you okay? That goes without saying. With circles in her eyes and a face as red as pig's blood, Ling Ming forced a smile and spoke in a hoarse voice. It's still too early, is that so? Remilia shrugged her shoulders with a do-as-you-please expression. Don't try to be brave. It was natural for Remilia to be so calm. The medicine Wu Yin gave Remilia, rather than allowing her to come into contact with water, it's more accurate to say that it's enhancing her body's adaptability to water, even if it's a hot spring. Thus, for Remilia, as long as the medicine was still in effect, her body would be able to adapt to the hot spring. She might not be able to soak in the hot spring for a long time, but at the very least, she wouldn't experience any side effects. If Remilia wanted to soak in the hot spring for 1 or 2 hours, she would be able to do so. In other words, Remilia was cheating. However, Remilia swallowed the medicine in front of Ling Ming and didn't connect the dots. It was Ling Ming's own carelessness. Furthermore, Remilia's goal wasn't to determine the victor between her and Ling Ming. Remilia turned her head and saw Ling Ming's increasingly red face. She raised an eyebrow. Still not giving up? It's still too early. Ling Ming seemed to have lost her mind. She kept muttering these words, but her head was also spinning along with her eyes. I can. Seeing this, Remilia no longer tried to hide her emotions. Her face tensed up as she called out to Ling Ming. It should be about time, right? There would always be times when a person's blood would surge due to excessive heat or some other reason. Soaking in a hot spring could also cause a person's blood to surge and increase their blood circulation. Here came the problem. If one soaked in the hot spring for too long, their blood circulation would increase and their blood would surge. What kind of situation would occur? Those who could adapt to the hot spring would feel dizzy and their bodies would overheat. It was possible that their skin would turn red. Those who couldn't adapt to the hot spring would experience the effects of excessive blood circulation. For example, a nosebleed. How was Ling Ming adapting to the hot spring? Was there even a need to ask? Ling Ming had only soaked in the hot spring once, and this was only her second time. After soaking in the hot spring for such a long time, the surrounding air was rather dry and her body had lost most of its moisture. Thus, Ling Ming's nose began to bleed. Drip! Ling Ming's face flushed red at a speed visible to the naked eye. The look in her eyes became even more lifeless. Her tense face collapsed as a drop of dark red blood dripped down from the tip of her nose into the hot spring. Seeing this, Remilia's eyes lit up. With lightning speed, she collected the drop of blood floating on the surface of the water. Then, she acted as if she couldn't take it anymore and floated out of the hot spring. I can't take it anymore. You won. Ling Ming, who did not realize that she was having a nosebleed and did not react in time, was stunned for a moment before she realized what had happened and said foolishly, I won. That's right. Remilia admitted since she had achieved her goal. You won. Then, Ling Ming said stubbornly. My furniture, I know. Remilia said helplessly. I will have someone send it to you when the shrine is rebuilt too. Ling Ming seemed to have relaxed as she giggled foolishly. That's great. Ling Ming's head hit the surface of the hot spring and her entire body sank into the hot spring. Ling Ming, Remilia, Patrice, and Black Knight's exclamations reverberated through the steamy mountain and into the night sky. Fantasy Village, Scarlet Devil Mansion. Looking at the gem-like drop of blood floating above his palm, Wu Yan was speechless. Soaking in the hot spring until she gets a nosebleed? To think that you guys could come up with such a method. Wu Yan didn't know what expression he had when he said that. Soaking in the hot spring until she gets a nosebleed? Not everyone could do that right. How did you know that Ling Ming would get a nosebleed? As long as the blood reaches a certain level, humans will have a nosebleed, Patrice calmly said. I think that Remy must have made up her mind. As long as Bolly doesn't get a nosebleed, she will continue to soak in the hot spring. Are you for real? Wu Yin looked at Remilia, who was sipping her tea at the head of the table. What will you do if the potion's effects disappear? What will I do? Ramilia said with a smile that wasn't a smile. Can't I just eat another one? Ugh. Wu Yin was at a loss for words. He had achieved his goal, but he wasn't happy at all. He only felt conflicted. Although Ling Meng's blood is essence infused with fantasy power, Wu Yin had the urge to throw it away when he remembered that it was Ling Meng's nosebleed. Forget it. In the end, Wu Yin couldn't muster up the courage to throw it away. He sighed and said weakly, Thank you, you've done me a big favor. Although I think so too. Ramilia frowned. But you don't look like you're happy. Wu Yin could only laugh dryly. He could only pray that the item that allowed him to ascend to the demigod rank wasn't to be eaten. Otherwise, he couldn't guarantee that he could harden his heart and swallow Ling Meng's nosebleed. Chapter 1835. Today's weather was unusually clear. It couldn't be said that the sun was shining, but the sky was indeed blue, without a single wisp of cloud. In the cloudless sky, a streak of light, like a colorless shooting star, cut through the air as if it wanted to cut the sky in half. It flew past with a long tail of light and landed in a dense forest. From the very beginning, the owner of the flowing light already had its own destination. It did not slow down at all as it shuttled back and forth in the dense forest, passing by trees of different sizes that were equally lush, flying towards one of the directions in the forest. Not long after, a medium-sized manor house appeared in front of the streak of light. The streak of light didn't slow down until the manor house appeared. It landed in the open space in front of the manor house and showed its original form. It could be worn as casual clothes or as a suit. It had a very modern style of clothing. It was pitch black all over, and only the shirt under the jacket was white. The newcomer had black hair and red eyes. It was Wu Yan. Looking at the manor house in front of him, the corners of Wu Yan's mouth slowly rose until they reached a rather happy arc. He stopped and walked over. When he arrived in front of the manor house, Wu Yan didn't knock on the door. It was as if he knew that the owner of the manor house didn't lock it. He pushed the door open and walked into the manor house. He crossed the hall and went up the stairs to the second floor of the manor house. He didn't know if it was intentional or not. Wu Yin tried his best to eliminate the sound of his footsteps. He went up the stairs very slowly and crossed a corridor. He came to the door of a room. He tilted his head and listened with his ears. Wu Yin tried to hear the sound in the room. Faintly, Wu Yin could hear a very subtle knocking sound echoing in the room. If he didn't listen carefully, he wouldn't have heard it at all. This also proved that there was indeed someone in the room. This confirmed it. Wu Yin smiled and pushed open the door in front of him. What entered his field of vision was a Western-style, slightly dreamy room. Just like a dollhouse where dolls lived, the room was brightly lit, and there were some pink decorations in different places. The color of the furniture was also relatively bright, and it was quite girly. In such a room, the young lady sat gracefully on the floor. His head was lowered, and in his hands was an extremely delicate, palm-sized doll. He was fiddling with something with a serious look on his face. The hem of the sleeveless blue dress was spread out like a cake skirt. With the young girl as the center, it formed a circle on the ground. The young girl was like a housewife knitting a sweater. While she continued with the work at hand, she exuded an otherworldly aura. Seeing this scene, even Wu Yan's eyes lit up. Ever since Wu Yan overbearingly dominated her, Alice's temperament has become more and more attractive. Also, her every move was like an elegant, aristocratic daughter. It's hard for anyone to look away. Even Wu Yan couldn't bear to look away when he saw her like this. And the arrival of Wu Yan. Naturally, it was impossible to hide it from Alice. But Alice didn't stop the work at hand, nor did she look up to say hello. She still continued to fiddle with the doll in her hand. Instead, Shanghai and Penglai, who were dressed as Western maids, were suspended on both sides. They bowed to Wu Yan as a greeting. Unfortunately, although Shanghai and Penglai had a healthy personality, they were just lifeless dolls after all. They didn't even have a voice. They could only bow. Wu Yan waved slightly to Shanghai and Penglai. Without saying a word, he walked directly into the room and sat opposite Alice. He stared straight at Alice and didn't move anymore. Under Wu Yan's invasive gaze, Alice remained expressionless. However, her pair of beautiful eyes had some ripples. Obviously, being stared at so brazenly by Wu Yin, even with Alice's indifference, she couldn't calm her heart. She wasn't as calm as she looked on the surface. Regarding this, Alice was angry and helpless. Angry, naturally, she was angry at herself and also angry at Wu Yin. Helpless, she was helpless at herself, helpless at the thick-skinned Wu Yin. Alice never knew that in this world, there really existed a person who could break the peace in her heart with just a gaze or an action. One must know that in the past, even Marissa and Patrice couldn't break the peace in Alice's heart so obviously. Ever since this man appeared, Alice realized that she was becoming more and more different from her past self. At least, not in front of this man. Could it be that this guy was really her nemesis? With such a helpless thought, Alice stopped what she was doing and raised her head to meet Wu Yan's eyes. Is there something? Hearing this, Wu Yan smiled faintly as though he had won some sort of victory. Can I visit you if there's nothing? It was the same conversation and answer as the last time they met, when he shamelessly begged for Alice's forgiveness. This made Alice's heart unable to calm down, and anger and helplessness surged up once again. If there's nothing, then don't disturb me while I'm making dolls. Am I disturbing you? Wu Yan purposely put on an innocent look. I remember that I didn't speak, nor did I touch you. How could I disturb you? Are you doing this on purpose? Alice furrowed her brows. Since you don't intend to disturb me, then don't look at me like that. Ah. Wu Yan cried out in a pitiful tone. I can't even look at you? Isn't this too much of bully? Bully? Who's the bully? Alice didn't know how she should react. She could only let out a faint sigh. What do you want? Wu Yan retracted his joking expression and stared straight at Alice. When he saw Alice's expression turning unnatural, he opened his mouth and said something like that. How long have you not been out? Alice was slightly stunned. She was puzzled. Why are you asking this? Well, Wu Yan didn't answer the first time. Instead, he said seriously, answer me first. How long have you not been out? Noticing that Wu Yan isn't just chatting and that he's asking this question in a serious manner, Alice fell silent. How long have you not been out? Of course, no one knew this better than Alice. Sigh. Wu Yan sighed and said straightforwardly, as far as I know, you haven't been out since that day, right? Yes. Ever since the day she had sex with Wu Yan, Alice hasn't left the house. She didn't appear in front of anyone. It's as if she's sealed herself away from the world. She's been staying at home, making dolls. Usually, Alice wouldn't run around everywhere, but she wouldn't stay at home for a few days. Alice might seem casual, but she was actually very afraid of loneliness. Otherwise, she wouldn't have attended Remilia's banquet. It was because of this that Wu Yan came to find Alice. Alice. Wu Yan looked at Alice, and his tone became melancholy. Do you hate me that much? No. Alice quickly shook her head and lowered her head. It's not like that. Alice did have complicated feelings about Wu Yan. After all, this person took her by force, didn't he? But surprisingly, among these complex emotions, there were no negative emotions such as hate or hatred. At most, there were only emotions such as anger and anger that were neither painful nor itchy. Alice didn't go out since then because she felt a little lost about her current self. She wasn't mentally prepared, so she subconsciously lived a life of isolation. She didn't know if Wu Yan noticed this. He stared at Alice, who lowered her head and didn't dare to look at him. He reached out and held Alice's hand. Come with me for a walk. This time, Wu Yan took a rare, forceful tone. His tone is unquestionable. Under such a tone, Alice actually subconsciously obeyed and nodded her head unconsciously. Chapter 1836. Fantasy Village, Bori Shrine. Wu Yan held Alice's hand as they walked up the stone steps in front of the Bori Shrine. Wu Yan held Alice's hand as they walked up the steps at a steady pace. At this moment, Alice was like a child who was afraid of strangers. She didn't object to Wu Yan holding her hand. She lowered her head and followed Wu Yan to Bori Shrine. Alice looked up and saw the end of the stone steps getting closer and closer. She whispered with a puzzled expression, "Why did you bring me to the shrine?" It was obvious that Alice didn't know that an earth-shattering event had happened at the Boli Shrine yesterday. That is, the collapse of Bori's shrine. Now, this matter was basically known to everyone in the illusory village. There is no other reason. As long as there is no problem with eyesight and perception, they should be able to see that yesterday, the dream seal released by Ling Meng fell from the sky like the sun. That dream seal move was indeed powerful. It was so powerful that no one in the entire fantasy village couldn't feel it. Even the ordinary humans in the human realm could see it even if they couldn't feel it. So, who wouldn't be curious after witnessing such a powerful attack? It was impossible to hide the collapse of the Boli Shrine. Under such circumstances, Alice, on the other hand, had a puzzled look on her face. She probably didn't know about this matter that was known to everyone. One could only imagine what kind of isolated life Alice had been living for the past few days. If Alice was allowed to go on like this, perhaps Alice would completely become a reticent person who no longer saw people. That was hard to say. Wu Yin once again confirmed that his decision to drag Alice out of this mess was the right one. He scratched his cheek. "Well, yesterday, I caused quite a bit of trouble. I have to go check it out, right?" "Trouble?" Alice's face was still filled with confusion. "What trouble?" Wu Yin bitterly smiled and told Alice what happened yesterday in a concise manner, causing Alice to reveal an astonished expression. "You destroyed the Bori Shrine?" "Actually, that's not my fault." Wu Yin tried to shift the blame. "It's that hateful black and white who attacked the shrine without permission. I didn't want to destroy the shrine at all." "Marissa?" Alice shook her head helplessly. "Indeed, she's the only one who can cause such a big trouble." Alice tightened her grip on Wu Yan's hand as she continued with a complicated tone. "Then, is Marissa at the shrine now?" "You can say so." Wu Yan looked at Alice with a smile. "What? You don't dare to see Marissa?" Alice opened her mouth slightly as if she wanted to refute, but she couldn't say anything. Dare to see Marissa? It wasn't that she didn't dare to see Marissa. It's just that Alice didn't know how she should react to Marissa. It couldn't be helped. Who asked Alice, who had a Yuri plot towards Marissa, to be eaten alive by a certain wolf? Who asked Alice to truly follow the harmony of yin and yang, and the great Tao of male and female pairing? That's why Alice was so conflicted. In this regard, Wu Yin only said one sentence. "Marissa is your best friend in Fantasy Village. She's the closest person to you. I don't want you to be afraid to face her." Hearing this, Alice's heart calmed down. That's right. Marissa was Alice's best friend and the closest person to her in Fantasy Village. Even if she had a relationship with Wu Yin, her Yuri plot towards Marissa couldn't be realized. She couldn't stay away from Marissa because of this. This was the kind of friendship that only existed between women. It was far more intimate and delicate than the friendship between men. Following Wu Yan's footsteps, Alice followed behind Wu Yan and walked to the end of the stone steps. After the two of them walked down the stone steps, the current state of Bori Shrine was presented before their eyes. The wreckage of the original Boli Shrine, which was supposed to be in ruins, has been cleaned up, leaving only a vast open space. On the side of the open space, there were piles of wood and stone. Under the processing of two listless girls, they were turned into materials needed to rebuild the shrine. Needless to say, those two girls were Marissa and Soul Shooting Maru. As for Soul Dream, she was still holding on to her imperial coin as she stood in front of Marissa and Soul Shooting Maru. She had a hangover look on her face as she clutched her head. Faint whimpering sounds could be heard clearly by everyone present. "Oh, my head is still a little dizzy and my body is still very hot. Very uncomfortable. But to be able to get a lot of furniture and tools for free, it is worth it." Such a sentence made Marissa and Soul Shooting Maru feel even more powerless. Damn it. Why can Soul Dream soak in the hot spring until she gets dizzy while we have to work here for so long and take care of the unconscious Soul Dream? Ooh, I really want to soak in the hot spring. I really want to write a report. There is no report today. I wonder if everyone will have a bad impression of Wenwen daily? Seeing this, Wu Yin and Alice looked at each other speechlessly. Soul Dream, who was still holding her head, inadvertently turned her head to look in the direction of the stone steps. She saw the man and woman standing at the end of the stone steps and was momentarily stunned. When she saw Wu Yin, her eyes widened and she shouted, "You actually dare to come?" The sudden shout startled everyone present. It also caused Marissa and soul-shooting Maru to notice Wu Yin and Alice. The two of them ignored Alice and shouted at the same time, "You absconding bastard! You finally appeared. What do you mean absconding?" Wu Yin retorted, "The one who destroyed the shrine was not me. Why should I abscond? You were the one who told me to destroy the shrine." Marissa shouted, "If you didn't want Soul Dream's blood, I wouldn't have become like this. It is all your fault. I didn't destroy the shrine either," Soul-shooting Maru said indignantly. "Then why do I have to be responsible for rebuilding the shrine?" Marissa and soul-shooting Maru's resentment has been accumulating for a period of time. Now that they have an opportunity to vent, the two of them showed signs of not being able to stop. "Don't just focus on talking." Soul Dream pointed at Marissa and soul-shooting Maribune as she issued an order. "Hurry up and continue." Marissa and soul-shooting Maru wanted to say something, but under Soul Dream's imposing gaze, they immediately withered and obediently continued processing the wood and stone in their hands. Wu Yin could only bitterly smile at Alice before he looked at Ling Meng and awkwardly said, "Sorry, Ling Meng, do you need my help?" "No need," Soul Dream said without hesitation. She even looked at him as though he was an unwelcome person and waved her hand disdainfully. "Nothing good will happen when you appear. Hurry up and leave. Don't hinder me from rebuilding the shrine, and don't give me any trouble." After saying that, Soul Dream snorted coldly. "Of course, don't expect me to give you any blood and cause any trouble. Even if you're someone from Yukari's family, I will still treat you." It seems that Soul Dream still doesn't know that she was tricked by Ramilia yesterday. She had already used some furniture and tools as bait to lure out the blood. Wu Yin didn't intend to expose her and shrugged his shoulders. "This time, I am not here to ask for blood." "Not here to ask for blood?" Soul Dream was startled and immediately became vigilant. "If you're not here to ask for blood, then what are you here for?" Looking at how Ling Meng is acting as if she's guarding against some dreadful beast, Wu Yin felt a bit depressed. "Can't I be here to make amends and to help?" "I already said that I don't need your help." Soul Dream was unmoved. "Just don't cause any trouble. All right, all right." After being rejected by Soul Dream, Wu Yin could only compromise. "You really don't need help?" "No need." "You don't need to apologize?" "No need." "You can even use gold coins as a gift." "No." Just as Soul Dream was about to reject him, the word gold entered her ears. She suddenly choked and crossed her arms. With a thoughtful expression, she nodded her head. "That's fine." Wu Yin, Alice, Marissa, and Sensei Marumi were speechless. Chapter 1838. Fantasy Village, Lost Bamboo Forest, Forever Pavilion. Even in this bright and sunny weather, the Lost Bamboo Forest was still filled with a dense fog that made it difficult for people to see clearly. The incoming sunlight was completely blocked outside the bamboo forest, causing the light within the Lost Bamboo Forest to be somewhat dim. Forever Pavilion was an exception. No one knew how it was done, but the sunlight that shone down from the sky and shone on the surroundings of the Forever Pavilion was not blocked by the heavy fog. Instead, all of it poured in, like a pillar of light descending from the sky, enveloping the entire Forever Pavilion. This scene could not be described as not beautiful. If someone was nearby and looked at the Forever Pavilion from a distance, they would see that the Forever Pavilion was shrouded in a beam of light descending from the sky. Although the style of the Forever Pavilion was an ancient Japanese style, it exuded an otherworldly temperament, as if it was a secret residence in a paradise, making one's heart surge. In the courtyard of the Forever Pavilion, there were many extremely fat rabbits, at least much fatter than their peers. They were about half the size of an adult dog. They were like lazy cats, nestled in various corners of the courtyard, as if they were basking in the sunlight. No matter how one looked at it, this was quite an incredible scene. Not long after, a door in the corridor above the courtyard slowly opened. A young girl carried a huge box and moved it with some difficulty. She walked out of Forever Pavilion. This was a rather strange girl. She was wearing a white short-sleeved shirt, a uniform coat, a red tie, and a pink pleated skirt. The girl had a pair of wrinkled rabbit ears that were at least 20 centimeters long. They looked like ornaments. Her long purple straight hair swayed in the wind. Her delicate face was a little rosy. Obviously, she was using a lot of strength. This girl was a member of Forever Pavilion, the pet of Mount Punglai, and the disciple of Yonglin. Not long ago, in front of Wuyin, Ling Xian bore the last sin of the 7 deadly sins. After a few days, Ling Xian had already borne all the 7 deadly sins. She was no longer the dissatisfied and depressed rabbit who had been eager to touch the opposite sex a few days ago. But now, Ling Xian was behaving like a cow. It seemed that even if she did not bear the 7 deadly sins, her life did not seem to be any better. That was why Ling Xian was the victim of his fantasy, wasn't she? She struggled to move the box that was half as tall as her. Inside the box was a large pile of carrots. She walked into the courtyard and slammed the box down as if she couldn't hold on any longer. Huff, huff. It was unknown if she had done a lot of work before this, but Ling Xian was panting slightly. She wiped the sweat on her forehead and complained. Why do I have to do the work of the emperor? Di was the other member of the Eternal Pavilion and also the last member of the Eternal Pavilion. She was also the pet of Mount Punglai's Bright Night. At the same time, she was the leader of all the untransformed rabbits in the Eternal Pavilion. Usually, the work of feeding rabbits was done by Di. Ling Xian's job was to assist Yonglin in making medicine. However, this rabbit demon named Di was extremely mischievous and active. Not only did he like to bully Ling Xian, but he also liked to run around and tease people he didn't know. It was precisely because of Di's bullying that Ling Xian received the title of rabbit. She must have gone somewhere to tease people again. Ling Xian sighed. I really hope the princess can teach her a lesson. As she said this, Ling Xian actually didn't have much hope. It was not that Emperor would not be punished, nor was it that Mount Punglai and Yonglin doted on Emperor so much. It was just that Mount Punglai only cared about playing games and reading comics all day long, while Yonglin only cared about her pharmaceutical work and did not care about Emperor's misdeeds at all. That was why Ling Xian was so tragic. Let's hurry and feed these rabbits. After saying this, Ling Xian clapped her hands and raised her voice. Everyone, come and eat. However, Ling Xian's shout only caused the rabbits in the courtyard to lazily open their eyes and glance at her. Then, all the rabbits closed their eyes again and continued to bask in the sun. Ling Xian was startled at first, then she became angry. Even you all want to bully me? It was clearly a reprimand, but Ling Xian made it sound like she was sobbing. She even had tears in her eyes. Not only did she not look dignified, but she also made people want to tease her even more. Thinking about it, it was because of this that Ling Xian was always bullied. Oh, Ling Xian's eyes were filled with tears. Why does everyone like to bully me so much? Suddenly, the teary-eyed Ling Xian heard some light footsteps coming from the bamboo forest not far away. Who is it? Ling Xian's body trembled, and her vigilant eyes became timid under the influence of her tears. However, she still turned to look in the direction of the voice. Ling Xian saw it immediately. On the mountain path not far away, 2 figures appeared there. Hand in hand, they walked in the direction of the Forever Pavilion. It was a man and a woman. The man was wearing a casual suit. Except for the white shirt under the jacket, the rest of his clothes were black. His eyes were wine red. He wasn't charming, but his aura was deep and unforgettable. The woman wore a blue sleeveless dress with a white shawl draped over her shoulders. The dress reached her ankles, and her shoulder-length golden hair exuded an enchanting luster under the sunlight. Her appearance was one of a kind, and she was exceptionally beautiful. Looking at the man and woman duo, Ling Xian was completely stunned. There were two reasons why she was stunned. The first was because of the woman. Apart from her princess, this was the first time Ling Xian saw such a beautiful girl. Her appearance and aura were comparable to Mount Penglai's Hui Yi. The other reason was because of the man. If Ling Xian wasn't mistaken, the man was the one who came to Yongyuan Pavilion a few days ago. He seemed to have done something with Mount Penglai's Hui Yi in Yonglin. He was pushed to the ground by her and was almost pushed back by her. Yes, it was Wu Yin and Alice. Holding Alice's hand, Wu Yin slowly walked in the direction of Yongyuan Pavilion. He didn't say a word to Alice during the process, so Alice's doubts remained unanswered. Why did he bring her to Yongyuan Pavilion? Alice didn't ask this question out loud. She just obediently followed Wu Yin in silence. Soon, Wu Yin and Alice saw Ling Xian standing behind a big box of carrots in the courtyard of the Forever Pavilion. Ling Xian stared at them blankly from behind a box of carrots. Looking at Ling Xian, who was staring at him and Alice in a daze, Wu Yin recalled the scene of him being pushed to the ground by Ling Xian a few days ago. He scratched his cheeks, and he grinned. Hello, Ling Xian finally reacted. She realized her inappropriate behavior and remembered what happened a few days ago. She blushed and bowed awkwardly. Hello. Alice couldn't help but grin at Ling Xian. Even Wu Yin couldn't help but feel amused by her. Miss Rabbit, do you remember me? I'm not Miss Rabbit, I'm Ling Xian. Ling Xian puffed up her cheeks. Her face was still red. She spoke in an uncertain tone. I remember, you're Lady Yakumo, right? Oh, this time, Wu Yin was surprised. Do you remember my name? Yes. Ling Xian lowered her head shyly. Although I was in that state, I heard Lady Bai's conversation with Her Highness and Master. I still remember. In other words, Ling Xian still remembers how she pushed Wu Yin to the ground when she lost control of herself. Wu Yin was a bit embarrassed. He asked Ling Xian in front of Alice's confused expression. Are you all right? Yes, I'm fine. Ling Xian's face turned redder and redder. She couldn't help but change the topic. Are you here to see Her Highness? Wu Yin was about to nod in response to Ling Xian's question when a voice suddenly sounded in the Yongyuan Pavilion. It's you again. Chapter 1839. Sure enough, it's you again. As the voice echoed, a tall and plump figure walked out of the Yongyuan Pavilion. She came to the wooden corridor and attracted everyone's attention. First, she looked at Wu Yin and Alice, who were holding hands. Then, she waved her hand at Ling Xian, who was standing beside her. Her expression is as mysterious as ever. She waved at Ling Xian, who was standing beside her. Adumbra courtyard, go back to work. Yes, master. Ling Xian answered in fear and trepidation. She didn't want to disturb Wu Yin and Yonglin. She lifted the box full of carrots and staggered to the other side of the courtyard. Wu Yin, Alice, and Yonglin looked at each other. No one spoke at once, which made the atmosphere a little weird. Just when Wu Yin thought Yonglin was going to give him a hard time and send him away, Yonglin sighed and waved her hand in a bored manner. You're here for the princess, right? Wu Yin was stunned. He didn't react to Yonglin's sudden change of attitude. The princess is in her room. She should be either sleeping or playing games. Yonglin said with a dull expression. If you want to find the princess, go by yourself. Wu Yin, who just came back to his senses, was stunned once again. He was surprised by what he saw. You're not here to stop me. Hachi-ai Yonglin dotes on Kagaya, or rather, she spoils him. A few days ago, Wu Yin forcefully took Kagaya in as a summon in front of Hachi-ai Yonglin. Hachi-ai Yonglin should be hostile towards Wu Yin since he performed life fusion with her. He didn't know why. With Yonglin's wisdom, what exactly did she think about the matter of him accepting Mount Penglai's Kagaya as a summon? Did she secretly try to remove the situation where Mount Penglai's Kagaya's life force fused with him? But logically speaking, Yonglin shouldn't let him come into contact with Mount Penglai Hui so easily. After all, last time, Wu Yin took Kagaya of Penglai Mountain as a summon in front of Yonglin. Yonglin didn't have the power to stop him. In that case, Even if Yonglin didn't feel regretful, she would feel unwilling. Logically speaking, he wouldn't let Wu Yin get close to MT Penglai anymore, right? Who knew what Wu Yin would do? Even if Yonglin didn't take Wu Yin down last time, her favorability towards Wu Yin must have dropped to the negatives. That's why she chased Wu Yin out of Yonsei Pavilion in such a hurry. This time, why did he compromise without a second word? Yonglin glanced at Wu Yin as if she saw through Wu Yin's thoughts. Do you think that the princess would hide all the facts from me? At this point, Wu Yin understood. Kagaya of Penglai Mountain must have told Yonglin about Wu Yin and the system. Also, and it was the kind that didn't leave out anything. This Kagaya, Wu Yin was dissatisfied. Speaking of such an important matter so carelessly, aren't you afraid of attracting unnecessary trouble? First of all, even if the unnecessary trouble comes, you forced her to do it. You're also the one who forced it on the princess. Yonglin said without changing her expression. Second, compared to the so-called unnecessary trouble, having that kind of relationship with you is the biggest trouble for the princess. With Yonglin Yatsuki's wisdom and the explanation of Mount Penglai, it was impossible for Yonglin Yatsuki to not think of anything. Yonglin sensed that after becoming Wu Yan summoned, Kagaya's peaceful life in Penglai Mountain is coming to an end. She's the worst. In the future, she might have to leave Fantasy Village. She would follow Wu Yin to another world. That was the biggest trouble. Yonglin didn't think so. Wu Yin would let Kagaya live a good life in another world. At least for now, it was impossible. It was more likely that she would be involved in some unnecessary disputes. Although Huey of Mount Penglai was an immortal from the moon and had taken the medicine of Mount Penglai, his immortality was superb, and no one should be able to kill Huey of Mount Penglai. But even something like the system, which even Yonglin couldn't understand, appeared. What else was impossible? In other words, Kagaya's life might be in danger if she went to another world. Yonglin is angry at Wu Yin for bringing about an uncertain future for Kagaya of Penglai Mountain. But she's also thinking about it. To Mount Penglai's Huey, perhaps this was also a chance to change his current situation and enter a new realm in life. In other words, fortune and misfortune came hand in hand. Yonglin chose to wait and see. Yonglin glanced at Alice, who had been silent all this while, and suddenly said, "This magician is also your summoner?" Summoner? Alice was stunned. She didn't understand what was going on. Not now. Wu Yin smiled. Definitely in the future. Really? Yonglin narrowed her eyes and asked another question. Then what about Yakumo Yukari? Yukari? Wu Yin didn't expect Yatsuki to bring up Yukari, so he reacted a little slower. Did Yonglin already know about his relationship with Yukari? But regarding this part, even if it was the system, it wouldn't instill the relevant memories in a Mount Penglai's Huey, right? How did Yonglin of the Eight Wolves know? Looking at the surprised Wu Yin, Yonglin seemed to have gotten her answer. She laughed in a very joyful manner. I see. Even that guy couldn't resist becoming your summoner. Then, it's not that hard for me to accept that I can't stop you from doing what you want of the princess. Hearing this, Wu Yin understood the situation. Yonglin was just trying to get information from him. After getting confirmation, she felt better from Yukari. Yonglin was still upset that she couldn't stop Kagaya from becoming Wu Yan's summoner. She only accepted it after knowing that Yukari couldn't do anything about the system. However, Yonglin didn't know that. Back then, Yukari couldn't resist the system and refused to become Wu Yan summoned. She used her realm power to slow down her condition, allowing her to stay in Silveria for a long time, even though she can only summon for a short period of time. This was something that Yonglin definitely couldn't do. Yonglin wasn't as powerful as Yukari. In terms of strength, Yonglin was about the same as Yukari. However, Yukari's ability was special. That was why she could resist the system a little. From this, it could be seen how powerful the power of one's cultivation level was. I just want to tell you something. Yonglin stopped smiling and looked at Wu Yan. Yonglin stood in the corridor and looked at Wu Yan. Don't let the princess get hurt. Leaving this sentence, Yonglin turned around and returned to the parlor without looking back. Wu Yin shrugged. Alice seemed like she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. She asked Wu Yin when she saw Yonglin's disappearing figure, "What is a summoner?" This was definitely not the only question that Alice wanted to ask. Judging from the conversation between Wu Yin and Yonglin, the two of them must be talking about something that Alice couldn't understand. However, Alice wasn't in a position to get to the bottom of everything. She only asked this question that was slightly related to her. Wu Yin didn't want to hide it from Alice, but he didn't explain it immediately. "Well, it's a little troublesome to explain. I'll tell you later. Let's go and see the princess." Alice pondered for a bit before nodding. Under Wu Yan's lead, they walked up the wooden corridor of the Forever Pavilion and headed towards the other end of the corridor. After a while, they came to a room. When they were about to knock on the door, a familiar and pleasant voice came from inside. "Come in." It was the voice of Mount Penglai. Wu Yan heard this voice a few days ago. Alice and Alice, who had attended the exhibition held by the Yonglin Pavilion, also recognized this voice. They looked at each other. Wu Yan opened the door and walked into the room. Chapter 1840. Compared to the first time they met, this time, the situation in Mount Penglai's room was a bit different. The boxes filled with game discs and mangas all over the ground disappeared. No one knew where they were taken by Mount Penglai Kagaya, leaving the retro-style tatami completely exposed to the air. The room also seemed to have been specially tidied up. Compared to the first time, it was a lot cleaner and didn't feel sloppy. In addition, there was a stove next to it that was releasing some kind of fragrance. The whole atmosphere was already comparable to the ancient Japanese aristocrats' living quarters. If, ignoring the computer that was sitting in the corner of the room, the screen was still on, showing an interface of an unknown game. Sitting on the side of the stove, Mount Penglai was still wearing the pink top and white bottom. The sleeves were extremely long, like a kimono. Holding a teapot in his hand, he poured coarse tea into the two teacups in front of him with an elegant smile on his face. No, instead of saying it was an elegant smile, it was more like an extremely playful, extremely cunning, like a cat catching a mouse, full of teasing, very black-bellied smile. With such a smile, Mount Penglai pushed the tea in front of Wu Yin and Alice, who were sitting opposite him, and said softly, "Have tea." Wu Yin and Alice, who were a little uncomfortable by Mount Penglai's cat-and-mouse expression, nodded at the same time, stretched out their hands, picked up the teacups, and sipped the hot tea. Until this moment, the scene was quite normal, and the atmosphere was quite good. It was like an ordinary hospitality scene. It couldn't be said to be harmonious and friendly, but it was going smoothly. But the facts prove that. Mount Penglai was not as dignified and serious as he looked on the surface. After his eyes wandered back and forth between Wu Yin and Alice's faces, covering his mouth, he chuckled. "Are the two of you here to send me the wedding invitation?" Unsurprisingly, this sudden speech made Wu Yin and Alice stare at each other at the same time. They spat out all the hot tea in their mouths and sprayed it toward Huey of Penglai Mountain. Mount Penglai's Huey seemed to have expected this reaction. He nimbly dodged to the side, allowing the two mouthfuls of hot tea to graze his body as he landed on the tatami not far away. Without waiting for Wu Yin and Alice to say anything, Mount Penglai's Huey was the first to complain. "Don't dirty other people's rooms, okay? Can you not speak so carelessly?" Alice raised her voice, unwilling to be outdone. "What nonsense are you talking about all of a sudden? I knew it. You can't be so honest." Wu Yin picked up the handkerchief on the side, wiped his mouth, and rolled his eyes. "How on earth did you think of that?" "Intuition," Mount Penglai Huey said with a smile. "A young girl's intuition. That's a pretty good ability." Wu Yin smiled a few times. "Then did your young girl's intuition tell you that it's best not to speak carelessly about things that don't need to be said?" The things that don't need to be said that Wu Yin was talking about were naturally related to the system. That wasn't something that could be casually brought up and talked about. Don't look at how Wu Yin usually didn't seem to care much about it. and even said that many people knew about it. But of those who knew about the system, which one of them didn't eventually become his summons? Basically, except for his own summons or those who would be his summons in the future, Wu Yin wouldn't casually talk about the system. If something went wrong, it would attract a lot of people who coveted the system. They wanted to slice Wu Yin and the girls who summoned him into pieces for research. So, the system's matter could be big or small. I'm not talking carelessly. I've only told Yonglin. Mount Penglai Hui retorted slightly and looked at Wu Yin with a smile that wasn't a smile. Or, are you trying to tell me that Yonglin is not trustworthy? Wu Yin really wanted to say that, even if he knew that it was just a joke. Just like how Yonglin spoiled Mount Penglai Hui excessively, Mount Penglai Hui trusted Yonglin. It was also more than everyone he knew for thousands of years. For Mount Penglai Hui, in his life, there is absolutely no one who was more trustworthy than Yonglin, even if she became Wu Yan's summon. That was to say, compared to Yonglin, Mount Penglai Hui's trust, Wu Yin couldn't even match it. If it wasn't for the system and the summon, Mount Penglai Hui wouldn't even know if she would keep Wu Yin in her heart. Don't look at Mount Penglai Hui's black-bellied appearance. No matter what, Mount Penglai Hui was once the moon's princess and the rumored bamboo takemi. She conquered an era with her beauty alone, so it was impossible for her to casually trust a person. Otherwise, a few days ago, Wu Yin wouldn't have needed to turn Mount Penglai Hui into a summon to gain a trace of Mount Penglai Hui's trust and let her give him a drop of blood. Although that demon sage in your family is also very powerful, my Yonglin is not weak either. Mount Penglai Hui held her cheek and sighed. If Yonglin wasn't here, I don't know if I'll be bullied by you in the future. Bully you? I'll be thankful if you don't bully me, you black-bellied guy. Wu Yin resisted the urge to push Mount Penglai Hui down and spank her, but he didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he shook his head. Are you trying to say that no matter what, Yonglin will be by your side? If possible, I would like to do so. Mount Penglai Hui finally became serious and looked at Wu Yin seriously. No matter what, I hope that Yonglin can be by my side, even if it means going to another world. Indeed, Mount Penglai Hui and Yonglin were already inseparable from each other in the true sense. The relationship between the two was not like Wu Yin and Mount Penglai Hui, where their lives were intertwined and they would never leave each other. It was similar to a life community, where they both needed and desired each other. Mount Penglai Hui said this so solemnly because she wanted to express her determination to Wu Yin. Needless to say, Mount Penglai Hui wanted to tell Wu Yin that she wouldn't object to leaving Fantasy Village and leaving this world with Wu Yin, but Yonglin must be by his side. Wu Yin didn't know if Mount Penglai Hui had already colluded with Yonglin, but compared to this, he was more willing to believe that this was something that Mount Penglai Hui and Yonglin didn't mention but had already decided on. Wu Yin couldn't find a reason to object to this. For the time being, maybe we can't, Wu Yin said in distress. After all, Yonglin's value is not low. Yonglin was a demigod powerhouse, on the same level as Yukari. When he summoned Yukari, Wu Yin used a total of 1 million summoning points to summon her. Yonglin's value was definitely not lower than that. Now, Wu Yin only had a little more than 10,000 summoning points left. How could he summon Yonglin? Mount Penglai Hui seemed to understand and didn't show any obvious intention. She smiled faintly. I didn't say we have to do it now. I'm just telling you not to forget about Yonglin. After saying that, Mount Penglai Hui glanced at Alice, who was silently listening to the two people talking, and asked curiously, Are you also his summoner? Alice was silent for a moment and shook her head. I don't know what you mean by summoning, I see. Mount Penglai Hui suddenly understood and looked at Wu Yin with disdain. In other words, you're going to abandon her after you've slept with her? Are all moon people so good at jumping around in the form of backflips? Wu Yin touched his forehead helplessly. I'm just adjusting my mood temporarily. I'll explain it to Alice sooner or later. Oh, Mount Penglai Hui smiled again, but this time her smile was more or less cold. To her, you're going to talk about your feelings first and then explain later. To me, you're going to get on the bus first and then buy the ticket later? Wu Yin almost choked. Alice didn't know what Mount Penglai Huey was talking about, but she could tell what he meant. She looked at Wu Yin with a slightly cold gaze. Aha! Wu Yin could only laugh dryly. I brought Alice here to play a game with you. Come, let's play a game. Oomph. Mount Penglai Huey snorted, but didn't object. He stood up and went to prepare the game console. Alice didn't say anything else. She sighed and followed Mount Penglai Huey with Wu Yin. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.